Incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, hello and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it is yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next few hours, journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly, and also political commentator Jonathan Liss. On today's show, In My Niggle, I ask whether mass migration is responsible for the rise in mass stabbings across Europe and whether our government is brave enough to end it.
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe.
We look at the shocking scenes in Austria as a teen dies and 5 others have been injured in a mass stabbing. An asylum seeker is in custody over the incident, with local police calling him the prime suspect. Elsewhere, European leaders hold crisis talks over the way Donald Trump is negotiating with Vladimir Putin and Russia. So do you believe President Trump can end the war in Ukraine? I also sit down with Errol Musk to get his take on the allegations of his son Elon fathering a 13th child. But this one has come outside of his current relationship.
In the last few years, he has, seen the light, you might say, and he's seen that the direction in which the United States is going is wrong. And so he's thrown his weight behind common sense, I would say. He's not a far-right person. Elon is dead centre.
Errol Musk will be joining me live. I'll also speak to one of the most controversial the UK has ever seen. Why, I hear you cry? Because he's a master forger, known for copying some of the world's best paintings and fooling the experts. Why has he chosen to reveal his hustle? He'll be joining me. And also, with Britain handing Mauritius up to £18 billion to lease back the island of Diego Garcia, I want to ask, should we just cancel the controversial Chagos Island deal?
Seems to be yet another betrayal of the British people by this terrible Labour government. This is a terrible deal. It's bad for Britain, it's bad for our national security.
But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
It's 2 minutes past 3. Very good afternoon to our headlines. The Prime Minister will join European leaders at an emergency summit in France tomorrow as they consider how to respond to President Donald Trump's push for an end to the war in Ukraine. Sir Keir Starmer is also to visit Washington later this month. He's hoping to bridge the gap between Europe and the United States. Of course, it comes after the transatlantic relationship has become strained following Mr. Trump's decision to speak to Vladimir Putin in search for a peace deal for Ukraine. Meanwhile, there are also reports the Prime Minister is preparing to overrule Chancellor Rachel Reeves and raise British defence spending. Speaking last night, the Prime Minister said it was a once-in-a-generation moment for the UK, the US and Europe to work together, and that it's clear Europe must take a greater role in NATO. It comes as the Munich Security Conference draws to a close today. It follows a weekend of discussions over security challenges with the Ukraine war front and centre. During the conference, Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, called for the creation of a European army after suggesting the continent couldn't rely on the US for defence.
Many leaders have talked about Europe that needs its own military, an army of Europe. And I really believe that time has come. The armed forces of Europe must be created.
Well, we understand senior officials from Donald Trump's administration will start peace talks with Russian and Ukrainian negotiators in Saudi Arabia over the coming days. Austrian police believe the suspect in a stabbing attack was an Islamist who'd sworn allegiance to Islamic State and had been radicalised online. A 23-year-old Syrian asylum seeker has been arrested after stabbing passers-by yesterday. A 14-year-old boy has died and 4 others have been left injured, 3 in intensive care. The 23-year-old suspect, who's not been named, is a Syrian national with legal residence in Austria. Meanwhile, the far-right Freedom Party leader, Herbert Kickl, said in a statement, "We need a rigorous crackdown on asylum and cannot continue to import conditions like those in Villach." That is where the stabbing took place. The family of the British nationals, Craig and Lindsay Foreman, has been rallying to secure their safe return after they were detained in Iran. The couple were travelling across the world on motorbikes but were arrested in January. Iranian state media has reported that they face security charges. Well, the Foreign Office is in contact with Iranian authorities to provide consular support. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands deal has been hit by another revelation as the mastermind behind the deal and the former Mauritian Prime Minister has been questioned over an alleged money laundering scandal. The Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, has been urging the Prime Minister to abandon the deal, citing concerns about corruption. Speaking to GB News, Secretary of State for Ministry and Trade, Jonathan Reynolds, said we'll need to focus on the deal itself.
Negotiation with the Chagos Islands is about securing the long-term future of an incredibly important UK-US military base. That's what the deal is seeking to achieve. It's why the previous government began negotiations around it. And what matters to me is making sure for our national security that long-term position is upheld. And, there's been a lot of commentary on what that deal is. When it's finished, it'll be published in the usual way. But let's not lose sight of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to secure the long-term future of an essential facility.
The FBI and the US Department of Justice are assisting UK police in their investigation of the Southport killer Axel Rudakabana. In a joint statement, Merseyside Police and the Crown Prosecution Service said they're working in tandem with American authorities to obtain material which may be relevant to the investigation. Now, it's thought they are hoping to recover deleted searches from Rudakabana's Google and Microsoft account history within the upcoming weeks. And the biggest night in British cinema, the annual BAFTA Film Awards, is getting underway on the South Bank in London. And the stars already have started arriving on the red carpet at the Royal Festival Hall. These are live picks, so it's a little bit of chance as to who we get. We know that the actor Jeff Goldblum has arrived. He'll be performing the piano later in the In Memoriam section. The awards hosted by David Tennant. Later, now there are 42 films up for awards this evening, with the papal drama Conclave leading the way with 12 nominations. That includes Best Film, Director and Leading Actor for Ralph Fiennes. It's a slow-burning thriller about the horse trading and the skullduggery that goes on as the new Pope is selected. A Spanish-language musical, Emilia Perez, also up there with 11 nominations, though its chances took a big hit recently with those historical tweets from its main star resurfaced. The Brutalist, with Adrian Brody, that's 9 nominations, and Wicked, Anora and June all have 7. We'll keep you up to date with pictures from the South Bank as we go through the evening. That's it from me for the moment. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's fast approaching 9 minutes after 3 o'clock. Now, coming up shortly, we'll be getting the latest from the mass stabbings in Austria as European leaders pay their respects to the family of the teenager who lost his life. Then, for the Great British Debate, first of the hour, I'll be asking if you believe President Trump could end the war in Ukraine. We'll also head stateside to hear about President Trump's latest approval ratings with the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge. All of that and more. Don't forget, stay tuned. I'll be speaking to Errol Musk as well and getting his thoughts on Elon Musk's supposedly secret 13th child. That's coming up in the next hour. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. Now we begin with the horror in Austria after a 23-year-old Syrian asylum seeker was arrested following a mass stabbing in the town of Villach. Now the attack injured 4 people and left a 14-year-old boy dead on the street. The suspect, who remains in custody, was granted a temporary residence permit and was waiting for a decision on his asylum application. Well, joining me now, former British Army security officer Philip Ingram, for his take on the ongoing case. Philip, I mean, we hear this constantly now, failed asylum seeker or somebody waiting for an asylum case to be reviewed, or is it time? Do we need to do something about the system of asylum now?
Yeah, and of course we had the attack in Munich at the end of last week as well from a supposed Afghan. We are importing people into Europe and into the UK who do not have the same values as we do. And they do not have the same understanding of how our society works as we do. And within those, whilst the vast majority want to come and better themselves, there are a number who don't, who are coming in for altruistic purposes, who can be influenced by different terror organizations, who disagree with the way we run our lives and want to take that disagreement into violence. And the more we do this, the more, and I hope this is something you can debate today, we have to recognize that there is going to be an inevitable level of terrorism that we have to accept.
Well, having to accept it, I don't accept it. I don't think it is acceptable. In your view, what should we be doing? How can we stop this?
Well, in my view, the level of acceptable terrorism is 0. But whilst we're balancing off letting these people in who don't have our values, we need to do something to try and speed up the process of assessing individuals as to whether they come in. Part of that needs to be to see whether individuals are in a position or are willing to add value to each of our nations from the cultures that underpin those nations, and not just look at people who are trying to escape or use the excuse of escaping war. In many cases, they're not. And Afghanistan it's difficult, but young males are not persecuted. Women are persecuted. We don't see many women coming in. Syria, the Assad regime has collapsed, and therefore it is safe for the majority of individuals to go back. We need to be much more robust across Europe, and I would argue close our borders.
I spent a bit of time yesterday arguing with people who said it was our own foreign policy that has caused this behaviour and we've imported terror because of our foreign policy. I completely disagree. I think that we've gone into other countries in a sense to try and assist, and those situations were there before we got there, and it's gone wrong. And so because we've gone in there and we've attempted to assist, it's gone wrong. And then people blame us and say, well, we're coming here because you destroyed our country, which is never really the case. Do you subscribe to any of that notion?
No, I don't subscribe to it being our fault in the slightest. If you look at Syria, for example, it was Bashar al-Assad with Russian backing fighting against his own people. That's what's destroyed Syria and created the wave of individuals coming from there. A large number of the people coming from Africa, through North Africa, through Libya and elsewhere, are economic migrants. The countries that they're coming from are corrupt. The levels of corruption, they haven't been under UK or Western influence for decades, if not centuries, and therefore it's not, nobody can say it's our fault for this happening. It's our fault that what we're allowing are so many to come in an uncontrolled manner, and that is something that Angela Merkel in Germany, whenever she opened the floodgates and invited everyone in, created a massive problem for the whole of Europe. And this is where our politicians need to start to become much more robust and to deal with this growing threat, because it's only going to get worse. And unfortunately, the minority of those that are coming in that cause problems are causing us to worry about the majority, the whole of the numbers that are coming in.
Well, a small minority of people flew a plane into the Twin Towers. So it doesn't matter whether it's a minority. The small minority can cause a huge amount of damage. And I'm a little bit sick and tired of hearing people sort of making excuses for allowing this. Now, quickly, finally, do you think the solution is leaving the ECHR? Or do you think, again, our politicians will just talk about it, not do anything, and say they're going to smash the gangs, which I'm not buying into? What do you think? Do we need to leave the ECHR? Will that help?
I don't think we do, because France, Germany and other countries are just ignoring it. We need to pass a piece of legislation to stop our judges being so woke. And there's something wrong at the heart of our judiciary at the moment in this country, where they always seem to come down on the woke side of everything. If they just were much more robust and at times ignored it and told the European Union where to go, like the French, the Germans and other members of the ECHR do fairly frequently, then someone would rewrite it and look at it and look at something that's more applicable in today's society.
I think it's a stalling tactic to make it sound like they're doing something. And then if they do that, that won't work. So they can carry on attempting to so-called smash the gangs. And very finally, do you think that smashing the gangs is a realistic proposition? You've got about 30 seconds. What do you think?
No, it's a soundbite that Keir Starmer's putting out. The previous government was smashing the gangs with the National Crime Agency. National Crime Agency hasn't changed in its priorities, and therefore it's him trying to suggest he's doing something.
All right, thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. Very interesting. That is former British Army Security Officer Philip Ingram. Thank you very much for your thoughts on that. Now, in European security, is European security in crisis? So Keir Starmer seems to think so. The Prime Minister is preparing to join his European counterparts at the emergency summit tomorrow, as they consider how to respond to Donald Trump's push for an end to the Ukraine war after the US president confirmed he would negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Well, let's get the latest from Munich with our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, what can you tell us?
Yes, hello from Munich, where the security conference has just finished in the last couple of hours. It's been an extraordinary few days here, and European leaders, frankly, have had an exceedingly nasty, short, sharp shock, beginning with that 1.5-hour phone call from Trump to Vladimir Putin, a man who was an international pariah, but now Donald Trump is having long and somewhat friendly conversations with, followed by by J.D. Vance's speech here on Friday, in which he spent 20 minutes effectively telling off European leaders over what he sees as suppression of free speech and letting millions of migrants into the country. Not talking about wider security, hardly talking about Ukraine, but saying that Europe needs to stand up and pay for its own defence. And then, of course, the speech from Zelensky yesterday saying that everybody needs to stand with Ukraine and act for your own sake. He is warning about wider war in Europe, not just Ukraine, I have to say, but Danish intelligence services too, saying potentially that if Europe doesn't up its defence spending massively and the US does not continue to support Europe, then Vladimir Putin might think of waging a wider war in Europe within 5 years. So all very worrying. Now, I spoke to Boris Johnson exclusively for GB News a couple of days ago. He accused European leaders of being like headless chickens, basically said that he thought this wasn't as worrying as many would suggest. But I can tell you exclusively now something that he said to me. Donald Trump, of course, has been calling for NATO members to spend a minimum of 5% on defence. We are at about 2.3. Lots of European countries at less than 2. But Boris Johnson, I said to him, you know, Donald Trump is calling for everyone to spend 5%. And Boris Johnson's words, exact words to me were, well, they're going to have to. Well, they're going to have to. That would be monumental amounts of money. So tomorrow, Emmanuel Macron is gathering together European leaders in Paris for an emergency summit, trying to work out what to do. They're worried not just about Ukraine, but about support of the US. It feels like Europe can't depend on the United States anymore. It really feels like we are at a pivotal moment here.
All right, Catherine, thank you very much. We'll join you later on. Thank you. That's Catherine Forster. She's there live in Munich. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun, here is a forecast of some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. We've got rain for Madeira over the next 24 hours, some stronger winds too, but much of the central Med will be dry with some sunny spells. We can see for Monday outbreaks of rain, strong winds, 17 Celsius Madeira. The Canary Islands generally dry, and much of western and central parts of the Mediterranean seeing some spells of sunshine. Unsettled further east towards Greece and across to Cyprus. Thunderstorms, outbreaks of showery rain. The outlook though is for plenty of sunny spells, temperatures in the high teens to low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
19 minutes after 3 o'clock, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, do you believe President Trump can end the war in Ukraine? This is GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, 23 minutes after 3 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, welcome. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, do you believe that President Trump can end the war in Ukraine? Now, the US president has reportedly made progress with Vladimir Putin, with both hoping to end the war quickly. But Ukrainian politicians have been vocal in their opposition to the negotiations. They have claimed that the US now has betrayed their trust with Trump, claiming that they may be Russian someday. So what do you think? Do you believe President Trump can end the war in Ukraine? Well, joining me now, political commentator Jonathan Liss, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly, let's start with you.
Well, I hope he's successful. 1 million men have lost their lives, and it's got to end. And I think it's a bitter pill to swallow, but I think if we're going to continue this war, I completely understand both sides of the argument. If this war is to continue, more millions of people are going to lose their lives. And at some point you have to ask the question, at what point do you cede land? At what point do you give away land in order to save millions of lives? I'd love there to be a referendum with the Ukrainian people with that question. But then, of course, people are worried that Putin's going to expand. Now, that's the great uncertainty about this situation. And in the last week or so, I've heard a lot about Neville Chamberlain, echoes of Neville Chamberlain in 1938, Peace in Our Time. I think politically, Europe was very different then. And don't forget, when Hitler lied, so Hitler said he's not going to invade that part of Czechoslovakia where there are German-speaking indigenous people. Hitler lied. And then Neville Chamberlain actually declared war within 48 hours. So I think it's a roll of the dice. Let's hope Putin doesn't lie, but it's a bitter pill to swallow. It's an awful thing to swallow, that an authoritarian dictator can just push west, steal land, 1 million men die, and we just have to accept it. It's awful.
All Russia has done is lie. There was something called the Budapest Assurances in 1994, the memorandum or the assurances, which basically guaranteed Ukraine's territorial integrity in return for Ukraine giving up its nuclear weapons. That turned out to have been a colossal mistake and a very tragic one for people like me who would like a nuclear-free world, and including unilateral disarmament, because it just showed that, you know, if Ukraine had not agreed to get rid of its nuclear stockpile, maybe this wouldn't have happened. But Russia was a signatory to those assurances. So obviously,
with America and the UK, I think.
Correct.
That's
so,
right.
and what happened? What happened when Russia breached Ukrainians' territorial integrity?
We abandoned Ukraine.
Absolutely nothing. But fair enough. Because was it worth going into war with Russia? Probably not.
Yeah.
So these things are very, very difficult. And you'll remember that right up until the invasion of Ukraine, Sergei Lavrov and Vladimir Putin, the Foreign Secretary of Russia, was telling Liz Truss, who was the Foreign Secretary of Britain at the time, that Russia had no plans to invade Ukraine and that we were being completely ridiculous, gaslighting us, telling us that. Lying to our faces, saying we have no intention of invading Ukraine. It happened a few days later. The idea that Putin is going to respect an agreement first off, I think, is unlikely. Putin will do whatever he thinks he can get away with. And with this president in the White House, he thinks he can get away justifiably with a lot because he's a lot smarter than Trump is and he can outfox him. Just as Kamala Harris said, he can get away with flattery.
Do you not think that President Trump is right that Vladimir Putin would not have invaded Ukraine had he been president? You don't?
No, I don't. I think it was. Well, look, we can't prove a counterfactual, Nana.
Why do you believe that?
I don't think that Trump would have been harder on Russia than Biden. I mean,
really?
No, absolutely not.
Are you having a laugh?
No. I mean, Trump was Putin's best friend.
Where did you get that?
Well, Putin was Trump's best friend.
Where did you?
While Trump was in power.
No, but you've just made a statement. You said best friends.
Yes,
How did you? Because this is the first time.
All Trump did. All Trump did. His first presidency was praise Putin. All he's doing now is praising Putin while attacking close allies like Justin Trudeau.
Was he wrong then to speak to President Putin first before Zelensky?
Look, I think I think the dialogue is always a good thing.
Okay.
I think that it's appropriate for world leaders to talk to each other. You never shut off lines of communication. That is why we still have a functioning embassy in Moscow and they have a functioning embassy here.
In that order.
That is right. I think that he should have spoken to Zelensky first, absolutely.
Why? He's not the aggressor, really, is he? You speak to the aggressor to stop the war. The person who's actually causing the war, which is definitely Vladimir Putin, then wouldn't you go to them first? I'd say stop firing the rockets. I would absolutely.
Well, obviously, if Trump was going to Putin to say, withdraw all your troops now and you can end this war today, I would obviously wholeheartedly support that.
Maybe
That's not what he said, though, is it? That's not what Trump said. Trump didn't say Putin needs to withdraw all his forces back to pre-2014 borders and end this war. That's the opposite of what he said. He basically
starting at a position of
what he did was say that basically Russia can keep the territory it's already won. That's de facto what he said. He said that Ukraine was never going to be in NATO, and Pete Hegseth and by extension Trump were saying that it's very unlikely that Ukraine's going to get back any of the territory it's lost. Now that's basically giving Putin everything he's asked for before anyone sat down. But the most important point.
I would call that being a realist.
I think that's...
I don't think that you're giving him a green light. I call that being a realist.
I just think we have to accept that Putin is going to get this land.
No.
Well, the alternative...
That's not the only thing he said, though. That's not the only thing he said.
No, but I think... So your position is based on Putin not being honest, and I completely get...
It's part of my position.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a roll of the dice, and I think that we should at least give him the opportunity to demonstrate that he's going to stop there. And if he does stop there, then Ukraine, unfortunately, and Russia, unfortunately, have lost 1 million men for this 800-mile piece of land. And I think that, unfortunately...
And whose fault is that?
Well, it's just dealing with people...
It's not just about the land, is it? It's also about the final state, what Ukraine's going to be. Is Ukraine going to be a neutral country, which is basically at the mercy of future Russian aggression? Is it going to be a vassal state of Russia, which is obviously what a client state, which is obviously like Belarus? That's obviously what Russia would like, if it's not going to be absorbed into its territory. Let's not forget that Putin literally tried to take Kiev. Ukraine, there was a possibility that Ukraine could have been absorbed, the whole of Ukraine could have been absorbed as Russian territory, the Russian occupation. I mean, thank God that never happened. So it's not as though Putin's only ever been trying to get the Donbass. That's not now, because Russia's been weakened, and that's a great humiliation for Russia, by the way. So they're not sort of currently advancing again on Kiev. They're basically trying to hold the territory they have and maybe sort of make minor encroachments further west. But this is basically a war of attrition right now. So this is the conversation we need to have about what Ukraine is going to do. Now, but the fundamental point, and I just have to make this point very quickly, is that we can't just have a negotiation between Washington and Moscow that doesn't involve Ukraine. And Ukraine is under no obligation to keep to that agreement anyway, just as Europe is under no obligation to keep to an agreement that is purely bilateral. And Washington is doing so much to reduce its influence in Europe at the moment anyway, by declaring economic war, by saying we're not going to guarantee your security anymore, that it's not actually in a position to exert that influence anyway.
Quite a while to talk, fine. We've been very generous. Don't believe a word.
In 1974, Turkey sent thousands of paratroopers into Cyprus because there was indigenous Turkish people living in North Cyprus. And there has been since 1974. And the United Nations don't recognise North Cyprus as being Turkish.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to suggest is that there is a precedent where somebody stops at a line and then it's patrolled and kept safe by United Nations soldiers. So lots of people have been saying echoes of Chamberlain, don't believe a word he said, but there is a precedent that you can actually have somebody stop geographically, and that's been a successful end of violence for, well, nearly as long as I've been alive, 50 years.
I don't agree with Russia being able to steal territory like that, but if you are in a war and your aim is to grab land, and then you grab a certain amount of land, then the war ends, then that land has been grabbed by illegal means, of course, but it's through war. And isn't that how most of the land has been divided up around the world? So I'm not comfortable with it. I think it's wrong. But at the end of the day, how do you stop the war? How would you do it? gbnews.com/your say. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. My next Great British debate, I'm asking, should the government raise defence spending back to its Cold War levels of 4%? First, let's get your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 32 minutes past 3. Headlines. The Prime Minister is set to join European leaders at an emergency summit in France tomorrow. They'll be discussing how to respond to the US President Donald Trump's push for an end to the war in Ukraine. Now, Sir Keir Starmer is to visit Washington later in February as well. He's hoping to bridge the gap, obviously, between Europe and the US. The relationship, though, is strained following Mr. Trump's decision to speak to Vladimir Putin to try to find a peace deal in Ukraine. The latest news we're getting is that Ukrainian officials will not attend Russia-US talks expected to be held in Saudi Arabia over the coming days. Meanwhile, there are reports the Prime Minister may overrule the Chancellor and raise British defence spending. We currently spend 2.3%. Sir Keir Starmer thinking about raising that to 2.5% of GDP. Speaking last night, Sir Keir Starmer said it was a once-in-a-generational moment for the US, UK and Europe to work together, and that it is clear Europe must take a greater role in NATO. Austrian police say the suspect in a stabbing was an Islamist who'd sworn allegiance to Islamic State and was radicalised online. A 23-year-old Syrian asylum seeker has been arrested after stabbing passers-by in Austria yesterday. A 14-year-old boy has died. 4 other people have been left injured, 3 of them in intensive care. The 23-year-old suspect, who hasn't been named yet, is a Syrian national with legal residence in Austria. The Austrian right-leaning Freedom Party leader, Herbert Kickl, said in a statement that the country needs to crack down on asylum and they cannot continue to import conditions like those in Villach, where the stabbing took place. The FBI and the US Justice Department are to help the UK police to investigate Southport killer Axel Rudakabana. In a joint statement, Merseyside Police and the Crown Prosecution Service said they were working in tandem to obtain material which may be relevant. It's thought they are hoping to recover deleted searches from Rudakabana's Google and Microsoft account history in the coming weeks. And the biggest night in British cinema, the annual BAFTA Film Awards, is getting underway on the South Bank shortly. That's our live picture, a little bit uncertain as to who you'll get and indeed the quality of the camera shot, but that's the Royal Festival Hall there as some of the stars arrive. 42 films up for awards in total. Conclave, the papal drama, will lead the way. It's got 12 nominations. Emilia Perez, the musical, up there as well with 11. Now, we can bring you some shots of David Tennant, the actor who we've already seen arriving. He is hosting the awards. Also up for a lot of nominations, The Brutalist, starring Adrian Brody, that's got 9. Wicked, Anora and June with 7 each. The Bob Dylan biopic, Complete Unknown, and the Irish hip-hop biopic, Kneecap, have 6 apiece. And there'll be a star turn from that man, Jeff Goldblum, on the piano in the In Memoriam section of the awards when we see some of those stars of screen who we have lost this year. We will keep you up to date with the BAFTAs as we go through the evening. We'll try and bring you some pictures as the stars arrive. And that's it for the moment. I'll be back with more just after 4 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon and welcome to a GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through today is often cloudy, still on the chilly side, but turning much milder as we head into next week. So having a look at the bigger picture, we're still in this battleground between higher pressure out towards the east, low pressure towards the west, driving these southeasterly winds. So through the rest of Sunday evening then, England and Wales are staying largely dry with some clear spells developing. Across Northern Ireland, a damp end to the weekend with this band of rain moving in to western Scotland and southwest of Scotland later could turn a little bit wintry over the highest ground. But otherwise, still a chilly night to come, and especially under any lengthy clear skies, we could see a touch of frost developing by Monday morning. So to start Monday morning then, actually it's quite a bright start across northern parts of Scotland. Frosty though, with a few showers just coming into Orkney and Shetland. Across Northern Ireland, a largely cloudy picture to start the day, milder here, temperatures up around 5 degrees. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, often cloudy once again, a few showers in the southwest, but some glimmers of sunshine coming in to the far southeast of England. So through the rest of Monday then, it is a largely dry picture for most of us. Best of the sunshine across northern parts of Scotland. Few showers across Orkney and Shetland still, with some glimmers of sunshine across the southeast of England developing later. And then a band of heavier rain moving into Northern Ireland later on in the evening. Otherwise, still on the chilly side, especially in the east. Temperatures struggling at around 4 degrees. But in the west, we could see highs of 8 to 10 degrees. So as we go through Monday evening, a band of rain will move into Northern Ireland, turning heavy at times across much of eastern areas, staying cloudy. But as we go midweek, we will see the return of wet and windy weather, but temperatures are on the climb with highs up to 14 or 15 degrees.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, 39 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome to GB News. We are Britain's news channel. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. It's time for the second great British debate of this hour. I'm asking, should the government raise defence spending back to its Cold War levels of 4%? Now, currently, defence spending sits at 2.3% of GDP, but with mounting global conflicts causing concern within the Foreign Office, David Lammy, our wonderful Foreign Secretary, says that the UK is absolutely committed to spending 2.5%, but should we be going even further? That is the question. So for the great British debate this hour, I'm asking you, should it go up to 4%? Well, joining me now, my political commentator, Jonathan Liss, and also broadcaster and journalist, Danny Kelly. Jonathan Liss.
I think it's a difficult question. We have obviously a lot of pressures on government spending. We have public services that we know are decimated. We have the NHS on its knees, schools in dire need of money. Everyone wants a piece of the pie, and they always have done. So this is about sort of balancing obligations and needs. Clearly, we have a situation where the military has been sort of run down over successive governments, and you had warnings by Richard Dannett today that we wouldn't be capable of sort of fighting a full-scale war, which a lot of people would think, OK, fine, well, let's hope that we never have to fight a full-scale war. But I suppose that, as we've seen in the last couple of years, sometimes that's not your choice. Which is not to say that I think that a state is going to be launching some kind of invasion on the UK, but clearly, a major country needs to have a solid defence to prepare for all eventualities.
What about the prospect, though, and people are talking about it, it's not just from Zelensky, that Russia intend to expand into NATO territory?
Well, this is something that the leaders of the Baltic countries talk about all the time. And this is also something that we know it's happened in Georgia. Obviously, that's not a NATO country. But we know that he is an expansionist, that he sort of believes in this idea of sort of irredentism. You have sort of Russian people living, or Russian speakers, which he thinks are the same thing, living in different parts of the world, and he thinks that he ought to control a lot of those places. And revanchism as well. So, this idea that you need to sort of take back land that you previously owned, namely the USSR. So yes, and even beyond that, so people in Poland are worried about his potential plans. So this is not just a sort of conspiracist ravings. These are some very serious people who have very serious concerns. So yes, defence is very important. I think that we should be aiming for more than the current amount, but I don't think it should come at the expense of some of the other very, very real needs that we have in our economies.
Danny Kelly.
Well, what's the bigger priority? Potentially a world war or something like net zero by 2050. So we're currently at 2.3% of our GDP spending on defence, bumping it up to 4%, so 1.7. That is, I understand that, tens and tens of billions of pounds. So what's going to give? Something's got to give. Either we're going to start paying more taxes. Don't forget that we were told that the tax is not going to go up for working men and women. So something's got to give. Is it the net zero push? Unless they put taxes up, it goes back to our conversation earlier on about the very viable threat of Putin and how it affects us as a nation. Donald Trump is making other NATO members feel a little bit triggered and a little bit worried about his commitment to NATO. Don't forget, when he was last in term, he actually gave them all a rollicking over a table to say, look, you need to start paying your way. Because I think the Americans pay about 4 or 5%. The Americans spend fortunes on defence.
They have, and they've supported Europe as well, and picked up the slack for many European countries who are in NATO who haven't been paying their fair share.
But it could be a temporary 4%. It doesn't mean to be a future 4%. If this threat from Russia, I hope, starts to dissipate a little, and Jonathan and I disagree about Putin. I'm willing to give him a chance. You just think he's a pathological liar and he's going to continue to expand. I think we should still try this anyway. If he's going to continue to expand, then I think we need to spend 4%. I'm hoping that he doesn't, and then we can get back to 2.3.
Well, I'm listening to that. I quite like your notion of us actually looking at net zero and getting rid of that.
Someone's got to give.
That's worked out as trillions. It's not going to save...
Because we won't get to 2050 with Putin.
We've just found some gas in...
Well, that's a nihilistic approach, isn't it? Sorry, Karen.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying that's a deeply nihilistic... I know, it's slightly tongue-in-cheek, but I think that, we don't need to worry about climate change because we'll all be dead soon anyway. So, happy Sunday, everyone. Look...
He's got a point, though, hasn't he? He's got a point.
It's a good point.
Without your defence budget and without looking after the people within this country, and right now, as opposed to 2050 or however many, we may not even get to 2050 as a country the way we're going. So you need to protect the people of this country. That is rule number one.
Yes. But I think that we can be short-sighted and long-sighted. And I think that it's a responsibility of every government to obviously deal with the threats and problems that are facing it in this particular parliamentary term. And also look at our... Yes, but it's always... If you don't think about long-term problems as being a priority, then they never get sorted out. And it's our children, our grandchildren have to deal with it.
They're always wrong. They might be wrong. They said that we'd lose all the coral reefs and we haven't. They might be wrong. They don't know all the information with regard to net zero. Carbon may not end up being the enemy. They told us that diesel was a spawn of Satan, but initially they told us all to buy diesel cars because that's the best way to go. I don't think that they know what they're doing really on the net zero basis, and also a lot of the things they're introducing actually use more carbon than the carbon they claim they're saving.
And also, it's relatively futile, our ambition. Look at the rest of the world. You look at these developing countries. Do you think that they, generally speaking, give a damn about the amount of carbon carbon they produce.
Well, some do, some don't.
So, exactly. So we are punishing. It's so punitive. We are punishing ourselves, and yet we have the threat of this authoritarian psychopath.
Well, you might see it as punitive, but I know we're not really thinking about this.
It is financially punitive.
But there is also a lot of investment to be made in green infrastructure, green energy, a lot of jobs to be made from it as well. It's not just punishment. There are also opportunities.
We're talking about defence, though.
For some very big companies, I would agree, people like Del Vince, who invest in the Labour Party and also have his own eco-tricity company making wind farms or whatever they are. So there's a lot of investment, a lot of people making money, including China and all the big companies. So I think net zero is a bit of a scam, actually, and I think we could be using the money on defence. But what do you think? gbnews.com/your say. But we go global next with some of the biggest stories from the United States, including Donald Trump's latest approval ratings.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ironic article in The Guardian, Nick, caring about facts.
Yeah, this is Meta is ushering in a world without facts, says Nobel Peace Prize winner. And they just seem to give these Nobel Peace Prizes to anyone these days. So it's Maria Ressa.
Not working.
Zuckerberg came out, and it was very bold. He said a few things. We're going to use community notes instead of fact-checkers. Fact-checkers in inverted commas, because it just means people pushing usually a specific viewpoint. Community notes seems to be a great system that X uses, so why not do that? I think that's great. He's going to reduce restrictions on topics like immigration and gender. Good, because I'm against censorship. He's going to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more, which is great. He's also moving content moderation to Texas instead of California, which is banter. So now the cynical version is he's just realises we've got a new regime, it's the MAGA era, and I want to be mates with Trump, who said that I should that if I interfere with the 2024 election, he should spend the rest of his life in prison. So he did mention he might be a bit scared of that. He was involved in that in Facebook suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, and I feel that he didn't like being a part of all that from watching interviews.
And also the suppression of arguments about gender and sex, what is biological sex and whatnot. You get banned for saying there are two sexes.
They're on the wrong side of this, and now he's correcting. But the weird thing is the people, of course, the people who don't like this, the lefties, this person, Ressa, is saying that this is a big problem. It's an extremely dangerous time. I've seen all this from the lefties. They just call it disinformation. They're worried about this because to them it's disinformation. To other people it's information.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think we can all agree if people think they're getting their facts just directly from Facebook, then something's horribly wrong. But we know that. The community notes thing, I think, is quite good because that sort of first-hand experience people are putting down, aren't they?
Yeah. People have loads of different views come together, and it's an aggregate, so that's why it works.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
It's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time for Worldview. Let's travel over to America and speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudderidge. Paul, welcome. Talk to me. Let's start Trump's approval rating. Is it going up? Is it going down? What's happening?
Well, you got to remember, last time he was in his administration the first glory days, it was 33%, I think, when he left office. It's now at 53%. He's a 53% approval rating. This is according to, not usually very favourable polls. 53% overall, 59% when quizzed about his handling of immigration. So you can see it really is filtering through to the American public that perhaps this guy does have their backs. The message is seeming to get through. Can I just say about the this Ukraine thing as well? JD Vance this week. Is it possible to just?
Yeah, please say it.
The way to look at America's motives or Trump's motives isn't MAGA, isn't Make America Great Again. It's America First, and that's what he talks about. Is America First, and it doesn't suit Trump's interest to have Russia and China as bedfellows and Iran. He wants to separate Russia from China, and nothing will stop that. So these European summits, etc., they are all futile. It is going to come to an end because Russia and America have to have an alliance that overpowers that of Russia and China. That is more important than anything. And again, let's not forget that it was under Biden that Putin went into Crimea, and under Obama that he went into Crimea, and under Biden that he went into Ukraine. And so this idea that Trump is some sort of warmonger is absolute nonsense. The stats don't bear that out at all. But anyway, always look through it. America first. What suits America is the only criterion.
And in actual fact, most countries should be putting themselves first, because that's putting your people first. Let's talk about the Gulf of America, because that's what Trump was suggesting we rename the Gulf of Mexico. Apple and Google, have they gone along with this?
Apple and Google have finally both bent the knee, and it is now officially, you can go to Google Maps. I go on about 20 times a day now, Apple Maps and Google Maps, and it's just there. It's Gulf of America, and which is reasonable because it is all North America. Mexico is North America. People do seem to forget this. But Mexico is now looking at suing Google for changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. And the Associated Press, where a lot of sort of local newspapers and news organizations around the world get their information from, they sort of syndicate out the Associated Press. Associated Press have now been banned from, I think, like Air Force One and Oval Office. They still go to the press conferences, the press briefings, but they've been banned and had their access limited and restricted because Associated Press still refuses to call the Gulf of America the Gulf of America. And so that's going to play out. But that looks like that's going to be permanent until they relent.
But who owns that Gulf? Is it America?
Owns it? Well, there's going to be no. I mean, it's going to be like any international body of water. It's going to be whatever it is, up to 200 miles off the coast of any country, etc. All those kind of. So the bits that are around America are owned by America. It's just that this has been It is largely a morale-boosting exercise, but the left have spent decades changing the name of Fort Bragg, for instance, or Mount McKinley. They will change the names, they'll tear down statues, they'll rename statues, they'll rename universities. Trump is basically undoing a lot of that, and it is upsetting a lot of the libs. But yeah, the bits that America owns. It's just a courtesy. Look, we call it the English Channel. You know, I think the French call it La Manche, you know what I mean, or La Manche, whichever. And so it is, up to whichever participating nation, when there's a shared body of water, how to name it. It's that Trump has managed to get the major reference points of Google and Apple to relent and go along with his naming, and that's upsetting Mexico.
Wow. Trump, wow. All right, listen, Paul Duddridge, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for talking to me. That is Paul Duddridge. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. And don't forget as well, you can check out Trump Watch, which is my watch, Donald Trump, every week on our YouTube channel. But stay with me, loads more still to come. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. Up next, you'll hear my niggle on mass migration and whether it can be linked to the rise in mass stabbings that we've seen across Europe. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through today is often cloudy, still on the chilly side, but turning much milder as we head into next week. So having a look at the bigger picture, we're still in this battleground between higher pressure out towards the east, low pressure towards the west, driving these southeasterly winds. So through the rest of Sunday evening then, England and Wales are staying largely dry with some clear spells developing. Across Northern Ireland, a damp end to the weekend with this band of rain moving in to western Scotland and southwest of Scotland later could turn a little bit wintry over the highest ground. But otherwise, still a chilly night to come, and especially under any lengthy clear skies, we could see a touch of frost developing by Monday morning. So to start Monday morning then, actually it's quite a bright start across northern parts of Scotland. Frosty though, with a few showers just coming into Orkney and Shetland. Across Northern Ireland, a largely cloudy picture to start the day, milder here, temperatures up around 5 degrees. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, often cloudy once again, a few showers in the southwest, but some glimmers of sunshine coming in to the far southeast of England. So through the rest of Monday then, it is a largely dry picture for most of us. Best of the sunshine across northern parts of Scotland. Few showers across Orkney and Shetland still, with some glimmers of sunshine across the southeast of England developing later. And then a band of heavier rain moving into Northern Ireland later on in the evening. Otherwise, still on the chilly side, especially in the east. Temperatures struggling at around 4 degrees. But in the west, we could see highs of 8 to 10 degrees. So as we go through Monday evening, a band of rain will move into Northern Ireland, turning heavy at times across much of eastern areas, staying cloudy. But as we go midweek, we will see the return of wet and windy weather, but temperatures are on the climb with highs up to 14 or 15 degrees.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you not one, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 4 o'clock, and for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next few hours, journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly, and also political commentator Jonathan Liss. On today's show, coming up next in My Niggle, I ask whether mass migration is responsible for the rise in mass stabbings across Europe and whether the government is brave enough to end it.
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe.
We look at the shocking scenes in Austria as a teen dies and 5 others have been injured in a mass stabbing. An asylum seeker is in custody over the incident, with local police naming him as the prime suspect. I'll have the latest on this tragic incident. Elsewhere, European leaders hold crisis talks over the way Donald Trump is negotiating with Vladimir Putin and Russia. So do you believe President Trump can end the war in Ukraine? I'll also sit down with Errol Musk, that's Elon Musk's father, to get his take on the allegations of his son Elon fathering a 13th child, but this one has come outside his current relationship.
In the last few years, he has, seen the light, you might say, and he's seen that the direction in which the United States is going is wrong, and so he's thrown his weight behind common sense, I would say. You know, he's not a far-right person. Elon is dead centre.
Plus, I'll be speaking to one of the most controversial artists the UK has ever seen. Why? Because he's a master forger, known for copying some of the world's best paintings and fooling the experts. But why has he chosen to reveal his hustle? And with Britain handing Mauritius up to £18 billion to lease back the island of Diego Garcia, I want to ask, should we just cancel the controversial Chagos deal?
Seems to be yet another betrayal of the British people by this terrible Labour government, because this is a terrible deal. It's bad for Britain, it's bad for our national security.
But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 4. Our top stories. The Prime Minister is to join European leaders at an emergency summit in France tomorrow to discuss the situation in Ukraine. It comes amid reports Ukraine has not been invited to planned talks between Russia and the US, expected to take place in Saudi Arabia over the coming days. Now, speaking earlier, Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, reiterated once again his country will never accept any decisions between the US and Russia about Ukraine. Well, European governments fear the White House could strike a deal with Russia, which damages security on the continent, following that revelation from Donald Trump that he's discussed the situation with Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, there are reports in the UK that the Prime Minister will overrule his Chancellor and raise British defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. Speaking last night, the Prime Minister said it's a generational moment for the UK, US and Europe to work together, and he said that it's clear Europe has to take a greater role in NATO. A knife attack in Austria that killed a 14-year-old boy and wounded 5 other people yesterday was an Islamist attack. That's according to local police. Authorities say the 23-year-old suspect, who has not been named, is a Syrian national with legal residence in Austria who has sworn allegiance to Islamic State and was radicalised online. He'd been living in a centre for asylum seekers and was not known to authorities. Well, the attack took place in the southern city of Villach. It's near the border with Slovenia and Italy. 3 of those who were injured remain in intensive care. The family of British nationals Craig and Lindsay Foreman are rallying to secure their safe return after the couple was detained in Iran. They were travelling across the world on motorbikes before being arrested in January. But with Iranian state media reporting they face security charges. Well, the Foreign Office is in contact with Iranian officials and is understood to be providing consular support. Sir Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands deal has been hit by another revelation, as the chief mastermind behind the deal and the former Mauritian Prime Minister has been questioned over an alleged money laundering scandal. The Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, is urging the Prime Minister to abandon the deal, citing concerns about corruption. Speaking to GB News earlier, Cabinet Minister Jonathan Reynolds said we need to focus on the deal itself.
Negotiation around with the Chagos Islands is about securing the long-term future of an incredibly important UK-US military base. That's what the deal is seeking to achieve. It's why the previous government began negotiations around it. And what matters to me is making sure for our national security that long-term position is upheld. And, you know, there's been a lot of commentary on what that deal is. When it's finished, it'll be published in the usual way. But let's not lose sight of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to secure the long-term future of an essential facility.
Now, the FBI and the US Department of Justice have been drafted in to help the UK police investigate the Southport killer, Axel Rudakabana. In a joint statement, Merseyside Police and the Crown Prosecution Service says they'll work in tandem with American authorities to obtain material which may be relevant. Now, that is thought to mean that they are hoping to recover deleted searches from Rudakabana's Google and Microsoft accounts within the next couple of weeks. The government's announced a multi-billion-pound investment in the steel industry. A consultation was launched aimed at looking at long-term issues facing the sector, like high energy costs, unfair trading practices and scrap metal recycling. Now, it is thought the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs and increases to energy costs have spurred on the £2.5 billion plan. Finally, it's the biggest night in British cinema. The annual BAFTA Film Awards are getting underway pretty shortly on the South Bank in London. The stars have been arriving for the last couple of hours on the South Bank at Royal Festival Hall. Now, 42 films are up for awards. The papal drama Conclave, that's Ralph Fiennes' film, that leads the way with 12 nominations. I think we can see some of the stars arriving now. David Tennant, he's hosting the awards. The Brutalist, with Adrian Brody's, that's up for 9 nominations. Wicked and Nora and June all have 7 among them. There's David Tennant, he's hosted it before, of course. And there's a couple of biopics up for awards as well, the Bob Dylan and also Kneecap by the Irish hip-hop duo. Yeah, here's the live shot now. It's a little bit of a lucky dip as to who you get on the red carpet. I can tell you that is Camila Cabello. Thank you very much indeed to my esteemed production team for letting me know who that was. I'm probably the wrong person to be sitting watching the BAFTAs for you right now. But I can tell you that will be getting underway, and we'll bring you some details as the awards are handed out as we go through the evening. That is it for the moment. More from me a little later.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 8 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. Sunday morning, the 15th of October 2023, 70-year-old Terence Carney was using a cash machine when he was stabbed multiple times by 44-year-old Moroccan Ahmed Alid, an asylum seeker. Mr. Carney died at the scene. Ahmed Ali appeared in court accused of terror-motivated murder and attempted murder of his housemate Javid Nouri. They were both residents of a migrant centre. Alid apparently told officers he would have killed more had he not hurt his hand during the attack, and claimed that he would have killed thousands if he had a machine gun. A conversation he later denied. He apparently shouted Ali Akbar as he attacked his victims. In Europe, around about the same time, a Chechen Muslim in France murdered a teacher and seriously wounded 3 others. A rejected Libyan asylum seeker in Brussels shot dead 2 Swedish nationals and seriously wounded a 3rd. And earlier that same day, another Moroccan had attempted to murder a Spanish woman in Catalonia. 31st May 2024, Mannheim, Germany. A 25-year-old Afghan refugee is accused of fatally stabbing a police officer and wounding 5 other people at an anti-Islam rally. 23rd August 2024, Solingen in Germany. A 26-year-old refugee from Syria confessed to stabbing 11 people, 3 of whom died during a festival. The Islamic State claimed responsibility. December 31st, 2024, Verricchio, Italy. A 23-year-old man of Egyptian origin stabbed and injured 5 people in New Year's celebrations before getting shot dead by a soldier. 22nd January 2025, Germany. A 28-year-old Afghan stabs 2 in Bavaria Park, including a toddler, killing them both. 2 adults were injured when they tried to stop the attacker. A 2-year-old Syrian girl was also injured in the attack. Olaf Scholz described the incident as an act of terror. And, of course, we hear today another migrant attacking and killing a person in Australia. Do you know what? I'm sick of this. Are you? Now, I'm not saying that all migrants are killing and attacking people, but what I am saying is, how come we're so slack when vetting people who come to this country and, of course, across Europe, and so hampered when sending them home when they fail their claim or claim that they have failed for good reason? When my parents came here in the 60s to live in the UK, they came using that old-fashioned thing called a visa. Remember those? You fill in forms and have to meet a criteria. The country then considers whether they want someone like you, and in that I mean that you are an outstanding citizen with a skill where there is a shortage. What can you contribute to this country, and do you have the funds to sustain yourself, or will you be a net drain? Questions which could be asked openly, but have been stifled by a woke liberal elite who, in my view, have positively encouraged illegal migration and made mass migration fashionable. They stuck their noses up at what they thought was inhumane Rwanda. Yet a migrant is allowed to stay here after sexual offences and even murder. Failed asylum seekers given repeated appeals at our expense. It is madness. For the past 10 years, a narrative has been pushed which has somehow disarmed the general public and an industry of lawyers which we are all paying for. J.D. Vance was right.
And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
He's right. The enemy is within, and we've welcomed it with open arms for fear of being called racist. But before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up. We will shortly be getting the latest from the mass stabbings in Austria as the European leaders pay their respects to the family of the teenager who lost his life. And following up in my niggle in this hour in a great British debate, I'm asking, is mass migration responsible for the rising crime in the UK? I'll also be asking my panel this hour, was Kemi Baden not the wrong person to lead the Conservative Party? All of that coming up. As ever, don't forget to send me your thoughts, post your comments. I'll be speaking to Errol Musk at the top of the 5. But first of all, we'll go to gbnews.com/your say. But let's begin with the horror in Austria after a 23-year-old Syrian asylum seeker has been arrested following a mass stabbing in the town of Villach. Now, the attack injured 4 people and left a 14-year-old boy dead on the street. The suspect, who remains in custody, was granted a temporary residence permit and was waiting for a decision on his asylum application. An Austrian minister has also confirmed that the suspect has been rapidly radicalised by online extremist preachers, and an Islamic State flag have been found in his apartment. Well, joining me now, former Prevent and former counter-extremism coordinator Charlotte Littlewood. Charlotte, what on earth is going on? We seem to have imported terror, and now it is out of control. What are your views on what I said in my niggle?
I would say, of course, there is a risk with migration and asylum seeking coming from countries that have experienced war and conflict. People coming from these places are definitely going to be more vulnerable, and a lot should be done to ensure we ideologically vet who's coming in, but we also have a very strong sense. And I think this is what I agreed with you and what you said. I didn't necessarily agree with taking a blanket anti-migrant stance. I agreed with what you said about the threat coming from within. But I think that really means not necessarily coming on the boats as for us or over the borders for Austria. I think we have a radicalization problem predominantly online in people's homes and within mosque networks, and some even charitable organizations that pretend to be charitable but are actually hateful existing in the UK that create radicalization. That's something I think we often shy away from dealing with because it's even politically more unpalatable to head directly the radicalization that's happening in the UK with British citizens. So I do agree with you that there is a threat. There's always going to be a threat from people coming from areas where they've faced violence and war, and ISIS, obviously, in Syria. But we do need to make sure we don't lose sight of the fact that the predominant threat is those born in the UK, radicalised in the UK, predominantly the terrorist attacks in the UK, of which there have been around 12. Only one of those attacks actually had people that came from a Muslim majority country into the UK and committed that offence. So we're looking at a homegrown issue more than anything else, and I don't want us to get distracted by the politics, especially Austria is about to run towards an election right now. I don't want us to get distracted by migration and asylum and then not focus on where the real predominant threat comes from.
Which is where?
Radicalisation in mosques, radicalisation online. We have hate preachers coming into the UK, predominantly from Pakistan, radicalising people in the UK. The ability for charities to exist in the UK that are hateful and radicalising. In Austria, interestingly enough, they are able to close down mosques if they promote a narrative that's against the nation state. I think that's pretty strong. We don't have that in the UK. And I think our monitoring and our closing down of radical mosques, monitoring of individuals, we've had people slip off the monitoring that have then gone on to commit terrorist offences. There's so much more we could be doing with prevent, what we could be doing with our counter-terrorism measures, with cracking down on charities and mosques that promote hate. We have so much evidence of horrific anti-Semitism and promoting violence against Jews in mosques post-October 7th, yet we've done nothing about that. So I do think it's a distraction to focus on migrants.
Do you think so? Listen, Charlotte, I listened to you, and at the very beginning you said people who are coming from these places who are more vulnerable, so immediately, almost as though it felt like your compassion came towards those people who are coming here supposedly fleeing terror, when a lot of them aren't. And we know a lot of them aren't. I get it that we have homegrown terror, but a lot of that is linked with an association with a lot of those countries where these people are coming from, where they have a different kind of mindset in this country. So I do agree we need to focus on our own homegrown stuff, but I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that those people who are radicalised, are being radicalised from people from other countries who have those ideologies, and some of those people are also coming here. I really feel that this country needs to be able to do exactly what you said, is closing down mosques where there's a problem. I think we should be doing that. I don't know why we're not. I think maybe there's a fear element with it. But I also see that the notion, although we may have a lot of homegrown terrorists in our own country, I don't see any harm in making sure that we don't import any more.
Yeah, I think that we need to make sure we have proper ideological vetting, as I said, but we don't have a country that's set up well to deal with the ideological threat that it faces. And I agree that there needs to be tighter measures, and I agree that there is a threat. But like statistically, for example, there are 95,000 Syrian nationals living in Austria, and one has committed a terrorist offence. In the UK, we have half the number of Syrian nationals, but double the number of terrorist attacks in the UK compared to Austria. So it just shows that statistically, if we over-focus on migration, we will just lose focus on the really tough bit, because it's so politically unfashionable to do anything around what we already have here, and radicalisation within family homes and invading into perhaps private, religious and personal spaces. This is where it gets really politically difficult, and it's so easy to talk about migration.
I don't know. I'm not really feeling that. I feel that we have an issue with migration in that we are importing ideologies that are not conducive with our own. And unfortunately, that is resulting in these sort of incidences. Do you not see that as well, that we are, in a way, importing these ideologies that don't fit with our own thing? So, for example, in certain these countries, they have theocratic regimes where one religion is the leading religion. Then they come to this country wanting to have the freedom that we have in this country, but having been indoctrinated in their own belief system, which is a theocracy, so they're unable to handle an ideology, an environment where lots of ideologies are allowed and prevalent.
So I think that's a really interesting one, because ideology absolutely does not move across, it can move across oceans, but it absolutely can exist devoid of movement from another country. And that's why it's such a difficult, nuanced and complex thing to deal with, is it's not just in a certain person or in a certain country. It's able to develop and morph and change the kind of ideological threats we're facing now, where people like Axel Rudakabana engage in lots of different types of hate and extremism and adopt almost a hybrid of ideologies is something we're seeing an increasing threat from. We're seeing an increasing threat from young men online adopting violent anti-women thinking. So there's so many concerns, and ideology is the key, and it exists predominantly in where it can spread the fastest and access the most people, and that's online. So,
but the anti-woman thing, is actually misogyny that has been going on for decades, and I guess it can morph itself in many guises, but it results in a similar thing: men thinking that they can treat women with disrespect. In fact, a lot of those religions, which have those other ideologies, have a lot of that misogyny going on, but that doesn't often result in mass shootings and stabbings and driving a car into crowds. And whilst I'm not saying it's a good thing, but what I'm saying is that this form of terrorism it seems to be far more detrimental to the people of this country and all around Europe.
Our largest terrorist threat stems from ISIS-inspired what look like Islamist terrorism. Is the biggest threat we face in this country, the violent threat we face from terrorism. So we absolutely should be putting our resources into tackling that. But I still think that focusing on migration is a part of tackling the whole issue, but it's not the largest part. It's like a disproportionate focus that we then
But then they're here, though, aren't they? So if you don't focus on them coming here and bringing that ideology, because even if someone is the son of someone who has that ideology, they got here first. So that ideology then perpetuates through the family, and then you have somebody who's born here that submits to that ideology. So it's not that young person who has just appeared in this house and got online and everything else. There's more to it than that. It's the mass migration before that. And so I'm saying that now they come here, and now they have come and they have children here, which is fine, and that's wonderful. I'm the daughter of an immigrant, but my parents came here acknowledging the environment of this country, appreciating the culture, and also evolving within it and becoming part of it. No one has any qualms about that. It's when that doesn't happen.
So interestingly, those that radicalise who are first and second generation, it's found that they do that because they feel at odds with the identity that their parents have adopted. So quite often the first generation will come in and adopt a hybrid identity. So in the 70s and 80s, they wanted to work, make a better life for themselves, became actually more assimilated. It's the second and third generation who feel like they are neither British nor what their family originally comes from and cannot find a strong identity.
Well, listen, Charlotte, I've got to go. I've enjoyed our conversation. We must do this again. Charlotte, it's really good to talk to you. That's Charlotte Littlewood. She is a former Prevent and Counter Extremism coordinator. Very interesting. Right. And now, if you're in search of some winter sun, here are some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. We've got rain for Madeira over the next 24 hours, some stronger winds too, but much of the central Med will be dry with some sunny spells. We can see for Monday outbreaks of rain, strong winds, 17 Celsius Madeira. The Canary Islands generally dry, and much of western and central parts of the Mediterranean seeing some spells of sunshine. Unsettled further east towards Greece and across to Cyprus, thunderstorms, outbreaks of showery rain. The outlook though is for plenty of sunny spells, temperatures in the high teens to low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Estelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This was thought to be a Ruskin. Ruskin was a very considerable polymath, an artist as well as many other things. So do you know why it was submitted for reappraisal? Was there a bit of a suspicion that it had been misidentified?
No, as you say, it's a service that Christys offer. You can submit an artwork that you have, so anyone can submit it and request an estimate, and then the auction house's appraisal service allows you space as well to describe it and ask for evaluation. And Christys sort of looked at it behind the sheet of dirty old glass and recognised a sort of Turner-esque mood and feel and ambience about it. And because there was this close relationship between Ruskin and Turner, which is fascinating, we'll come on to that shortly, but they sort of felt, well, the brushstrokes are very strong, the line is very economic, and the colour of the palette seems to be rather Turner-esque. And then they called in a specialist paper historian who confirmed that actually the paper that was used was one that Turner favoured himself. So yes, it was originally considered to be by Ruskin, but then we discovered something more magnificent. And don't forget, what's really interesting, now it's for sale. The lucky buyer is not just buying a picture. The lucky buyer is buying a life story, a relationship that actually changed the course of art history because of the relationship between Ruskin and Turner themselves.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing.
With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is mass migration responsible for rising crime in the UK? Over 130,000 foreign national arrests took place in England and Wales during the first 10 months of 2024, which represents 16.1% of the total number of arrests. And this is despite foreign nationals representing just 9% of the population. But why is this the case? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is mass migration responsible for rising crime in the UK? Joining me to discuss, political commentator Jonathan Liss, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly, I will start with you.
Well, you just demonstrated there that mass migration is responsible for a spike in crime. I mean, it's there in front of our very eyes. I was reading with great interest the story that the Mail ran this week about Liverpool being the only city in the United Kingdom that has managed to keep Albanian gangsters out of running the drug trade. So the story in itself is telling you that migration of Albanian gangsters is causing waves of crime all across the country. In Birmingham, it's men of Pakistani descent who are in charge of the heroin, and also in North London, it's a Turkish crime family and Turkish crime families that are responsible for that.
How do you know all that?
Well, the police will tell you. The police go after them. The police bust them. They're in prison. You know, this is common knowledge. So
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. The only city in the UK which is overwhelmingly run by, if you like, English people is Liverpool. The rest of it is heavily infiltrated by people of foreign nationality. You just on the screen, 100 and so many thousand arrests of foreigners. I mean, your guest touched.
I didn't realise all the gang stuff that you're.
Very much so.
I didn't realise.
It's there. It's out there. These are facts. So mass migration has caused crime and criminality in the United Kingdom.
Well, listen, I'll take your word on those. Jonathan Liss.
No, I don't accept that. And I also, when you're looking at these figures, it's always interesting to understand what is defined as a foreign, or who is defined as a foreign national. Is it someone who might have lived here for a very, very long time without claiming citizenship? Is it someone who might have been born here but doesn't have British citizenship? Alternatively, there are some people who were born abroad but have UK citizenship.
Well, let's take it that it is somebody who is a migrant who has come here and it does not necessarily have British citizenship.
Well, look,
let's take it.
But there are, fine, but there are, for example, I was looking at the National Office of Statistics. They say they don't have statistics for certain things.
For migrants,
they don't have statistics. So it's actually very difficult to understand what terms we're all agreeing on. So in that sense, it's difficult for us to have a data-led conversation on this. And I fear that what often happens with these conversations is they become quite emotional, and so whatever you happen to think about migration gets fed into the debate. Whereas I'd be interested to see if the ONS did carry out data on this, which I understand why they don't.
Why?
Because it's not necessarily relevant. Because I don't.
Well, why is it relevant?
I'll tell you why.
Sorry, if I'm asking the question, then it's relevant. In fact, we're all asking the question, so it's 100% relevant.
Well, I'm not asking the question.
Well, you're one out of three.
Right. But the point is that I do not believe, now you're free to disagree, but I do not believe that certain national groups or certain ethnic groups are more likely to be disposed to criminality than other groups. I think that, obviously it's useful to look at data for arrests where necessary. I don't think that we should have no statistics on this. But I think that also, as with all science, the way that you are choosing to collate statistics is informed by what we already think. And that's been the way with science for centuries, that the science you get is informed by human beings who have certain prejudices, biases, or opinions before. It's not to say that you can't...
No. Well, I don't know what you're saying.
Well, I'm saying
I don't really get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Right. These are just crime figures over for somebody who's come to this country who isn't necessarily a British national, who's committed a crime, somebody who's an asylum seeker, somebody who's a refugee, or that kind of thing. I don't see why the statistics would represent anything.
Jonathan, I haven't offered an opinion or any prejudice.
I'm not saying that anyone here has done that.
No, but I'm speaking about statistics. 11.9% of the prison population are foreigners. They're people who've come to this country and have committed crime. So the question is mass migration causing I'm paraphrasing, a spike in criminality? Well, the statistics are there. It's not an opinion. It's a simple statistic that 1 in 8 men in prison are foreign nationals, which is 12%.
Well, you'd obviously expect, because there are a lot of foreign nationals in this country, based on different ways that you might define that. So obviously you'd expect them to have a share of criminals. It doesn't mean that we have a spike in criminality.
But it's disproportionate.
Well, it might be that certain crimes are sort of overrepresented by certain groups. That might well be the case. What I would not want to do is extrapolate from that a kind of a general sort of malaise or a general kind of antipathy to migrants, to say it is because of this that we are having a spike in crime. Actually, crime in this country remains... Obviously, there are some ups and downs, but it remains roughly constant. It's not true that we're having a massive spike in all kinds of crimes in this country.
Well, in particular,
homicides, for example, are pretty much level.
With terror-related crime, we know that the majority of the terror-related crime is linked to Islamism. So we know that.
OK, well, fortunately, we don't have... touch wood, we haven't had a lot of terror-related crime in the last...
That's down to MI5.
Of course.
Doesn't mean the problem's not there, though.
Of course not. But if you're talking about actual figures, fortunately, we've been spared for the last couple of years. Which is not to say there is no threat. Of course, there is a threat, and the threat is coming from different groups. Now, of course, it's more from the Islamist side, but the far right groups are also planning. Well, they absolutely are active.
But it's a very small proportion, and the far right, as you say, would be our own kind of terror in this country from people who usually were born in this country. Is what I'm saying.
Plenty of Islamists are born in this country as well.
Well, they may well be, but it's Islamism, isn't it?
But I think, generally speaking, the population is more worried about Islamist terrorism. I went to the Christmas market in Birmingham, and it's the security. It's like airport security, steel bollards everywhere. Now, that's not to stop far-right lunatics, is it? That's to stop Islamist
lunatics. Obviously, that far-right aren't going to be targeting that, but far-right aren't going to be targeting mosques.
Nobody's saying that one is better than the other, but we're simply giving statistics that actually we know, and even Charlotte said it, that the majority of terror and the majority of terrorism that they deal with and prevent is coming from Islamism, and not from the far right.
But she also said they're coming from people who are born in this country.
Yes.
That's why.
Well, that's true.
That's what I agree with her. We kind of have an overall focus on migration, which is actually not.
That may be
useful.
true, but remember the people before them are actually usually from somewhere else. So, but then she did point out that actually it seems it's the second and third generation that seem to be involved in this terror.
Criminality is not a genetic inheritance. So, you know, it's not the fact that your grandparents might have arrived here is not.
No, but you're here because they are.
But
curiously, I've got to go to news. We will come back and we'll carry on with this. What do you think? gbnews.com/you'll say. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. The next question was: Can Badenoch the wrong choice to lead the Conservative Party? First, let's get your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Good afternoon to you. Let's get you up to date with our top stories. The Prime Minister will join European leaders at an emergency summit in France tomorrow to discuss the situation in Ukraine as the United States prepares for peace negotiations with Russia. Talks between the US and Russia are expected to take place in Saudi Arabia over the coming days, although Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine has not been invited. Speaking earlier, Mr. Zelensky reiterated his country will never accept any decisions between the US and Russia about his country. Well, European governments fear the White House could strike a deal with Russia, which will damage security on the continent. The governments warned President Trump that talks about Ukraine will fail if he shuts Europe out. Sir Keir Starmer has offered to act as a bridge between the US and the EU. A knife attack in Austria that killed a 14-year-old boy and wounded 5 other people yesterday was an Islamist attack, according to local police. Authorities say the 23-year-old suspect is a Syrian national with legal residence in Austria who has sworn allegiance to Islamic State and was radicalised online. He had been living in a centre for asylum seekers and was not known to authorities. The attack took place in the southern city of Villach. It's near the border with Italy. 3 of those who were injured remain in intensive care. Sir Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands deal has been hit by another revelation as the chief mastermind behind the deal and the former Mauritian Prime Minister has been questioned over an alleged money laundering scandal. The Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has been urging the Prime Minister to abandon the deal, citing concerns about corruption. A little earlier, Cabinet Minister Jonathan Reynolds told us we must surely just focus on the deal itself. And it's the biggest night in British cinema, the BAFTA Film Awards. It's all taking place on the South Bank in London. The stars have been arriving on the red carpet for the last couple of hours. Some live pictures now from the Royal Festival Hall. As we'll try to bring you some of the stars of the films that are up for the awards. I'm not aware who that is, but I'm sure our production team will let me know shortly. Conclave is most nominated, 12 nods it's got. The Papal Drama starring Ralph Fiennes. Emilia Perez, the musical, has 11, and it is followed by The Brutalist with 9. Now, David Tennant will be hosting the awards. The British actor, he's done that before. Also up for awards are 2 biopics, the Bob Dylan, Complete Unknown, and also the Kneecap, the Irish hip-hop duo. They are up for 6 gongs, and Jeff Goldblum, the esteemed actor, he will perform on the piano during the In Memoriam section of the awards. We'll keep an eye out for all of that. And there's Adrian Brody, their star of The Brutalist, up for 9. Not sure whether you've seen The Brutalist yet. It's a bit of a mission, 3.5 hours, perhaps more. So do get the popcorn and the snacks ready if you're going to sit down for that one. But yes, Adrian Brody up, as is his film. We will keep you posted as we go through the evening. That's it from me. Now it's back over to Nana.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through today is often cloudy, still on the chilly side, but turning much milder as we head into next week. So having a look at the bigger picture, we're still in this battleground between higher pressure out towards the east, low pressure towards the west, driving these southeasterly winds. So through the rest of Sunday evening then, England and Wales are staying largely dry with some clear spells developing. Across Northern Ireland, a damp end to the weekend with this band of rain moving in to western Scotland and southwest of Scotland later, could turn a little bit wintry over the highest ground. But otherwise, still a chilly night to come, and especially under any lengthy clear skies, we could see a touch of frost developing by Monday morning. So to start Monday morning then, actually it's quite a bright start across northern parts of Scotland. Frosty though, with a few showers just coming into Orkney and Shetland. Across Northern Ireland, a largely cloudy picture to start the day, milder here, temperatures up around 5 degrees. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, often cloudy once again, a few showers in the southwest, but some glimmers of sunshine coming in to the far southeast of England. So through the rest of Monday then, it is a largely dry picture for most of us. Best of the sunshine across northern parts of Scotland. Few showers across Orkney and Shetland still, with some glimmers of sunshine across the southeast of England developing later, and then a band of heavier rain moving into Northern Ireland later on in the evening. Otherwise, still on the chilly side, especially in the east, temperatures struggling at around 4 degrees, but in the west we could see highs of 8 to 10 degrees. So as we go through Monday evening, a band of rain will move into Northern Ireland, turning heavy at times across much of eastern areas, staying cloudy. But as we go midweek, we will see the return of wet and windy weather, but temperatures are on the climb with highs up to 14 or 15 degrees.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's just coming up to 42 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? We're midway through the programme. 3 o'clock next time. I'm Nana Akua. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Kemi Badenoch the wrong choice to lead the Tories? This week marked 100 days of Kemi Badenoch's Tory leadership. And according to official at YouGov data, only a quarter of Britons, that's 25%, consider Kemi Badenoch to be doing a good job as leader of the Conservatives, and 48% of the Conservative voters believe that she does not look like a Prime Minister in waiting. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Kemi Badenoch the wrong choice to lead the Tories? Joining me now, political commentator Jonathan Liss and broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Jonathan Liss, Kemi Badenoch.
Absolutely the wrong person to lead the Conservative Party. She has been a total disaster, Nana. She is so bad at Prime Minister's questions. She's, if anything, seeing a fall in support for the Conservative Party. She just doesn't know what she's doing. She's incredibly arrogant, incredibly abrasive, but with none of the talent or competence that might compensate for it. And so what you have is she comes to Parliament every week. She comes armed with a set of questions. And when Starmer gives her an answer that she wasn't expecting, she has no agility or ability to sort of change the question. So that's why she asked the same question 3 or 4 times last week. And what a lot of commentators were saying was the worst performance they'd ever seen at Prime Minister's questions by Leader of the Opposition. And so the problem is that they are stuck with her because they changed the rules now to increase the threshold at which Conservative MPs can ask for a vote of no confidence. So the best thing for Labour is that she's probably going to be in there for a few years, or maybe even 5 whole years. And that is why we talk a lot about reform in this programme. We don't talk as much about the actual hemorrhaging of support for the Conservative Party. They are nowhere to be seen. They're not going to be forming the next government.
Danny Kelly, do you think that she makes Keir Starmer look good?
Oh, my God. I've just realised in one question how rubbish she is. She actually makes Keir Starmer look good. I've never really thought about it like that, because Keir Starmer is such a sort of... He's so vanilla, he's blancmange, he's just like a cardboard cutout of a man. I think Nigel Farage and Reform are absolutely made up that Kemi Badenoch is the leader of the Conservative Party, because she is such a weak contender. And I think the Tory membership have bought a pup. The expression that buyer's remorse, you bought a pup, you got a lemon. And I think now they deeply regret their choice. And if you cast your mind back, there was this almost tactical voting going on with the Tory leadership.
Should have been Cleverly.
Do you remember that?
Cleverly should have been the leader. He would have been a decent leader.
Yeah.
Generic.
I like Robert Jenrick.
It was for Generick.
Yeah.
But I would respect the choice of the Conservative Party, and I was pleased to see Kemi leading it, but I did think Generick would have made a better leader.
I think anyone who wants to oust this Labour administration would be made up that Kemi Badenoch is the leader.
She's the greatest gift that Labour could have hoped for, because so many things have gone wrong for Labour, and the right-wing media is out to get Labour so much. They would love to have a potential leader in waiting, a potential new Thatcher or whatever, who was just sort of champing at the bit to come into Downing Street, but they know they don't have that, and that's why partly so much of the press attention has gone to Farage, who, let's not forget, he has 5 seats. As things stand, he's not about to enter Downing Street.
Well, I hear that.
As things stand.
But the Reform did come second in over 90 seats across the general election, so I don't think that just because they have 5, I think it's more working of the electoral system. If you know how to play it, then you can play it correctly. The Liberal Democrats are very good at that. But this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our Great British Voice, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Let's get a catching. Let's speak to Alex Metcalfe. Alex, lovely to talk to you. OK, come on.
And you again.
What do you think? Is Kemi Badenoch the wrong choice for the Tories?
Yes, of course she is. But you look at the 5 that they had up for selection. I mean, none of them were particularly inspiring. So, you know, she's the best of the bad bunch, in my opinion. At first, I was quite happy to see her win the vote. But, I mean, in my eyes, Farage is the real credible opposition. So, you know, she's really a mere second thought as far as I'm concerned.
Did you see her on PMQs? It was this week on the Wednesday where she appeared to ask the same question 6 times, I think. It was the only question.
Yeah, well, she's extremely out of her depth, unfortunately. She's not... I mean, she's got about 100 MPs wincing behind her, so, you know, it's not a pretty picture for the Tory party, I'm afraid.
Do you think that she makes Keir Starmer look good?
No. I don't think no one can make Keir Starmer look good. I mean, he's been in charge for 6 months and he's already ruined the country, ruined the economy. So, you know, there's not really much that can make him look particularly good, I'm afraid.
Who would you pick instead of Kemi Badenoch?
I couldn't pick any Tory MP, I'm afraid. I would say, I mean, Richie's my MP, but I wouldn't pick him. The only way I'd probably vote for the Conservative or pick a leader if they had a pact with Reform, and then I'd be all for Farage. So that's the only way, I'm afraid.
Alex, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your thoughts. That's Alex Metcalfe. He's my Great British Voice. Right, well, welcome to you. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Conservative Party. That's next.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, we're going to introduce you to Liam Wildish. Liam, well, I'd like to think he's a friend of mine because I follow him on Instagram, on TikTok there as well.
You're a big fan, aren't you?
Big fan, because there's what he does. He's a cleaner. He cleans signs. But the thing is, he's not employed by councils or whatever. He does this voluntarily. And you sort of think to yourself, well, who cleans these signs? Why have these signs been allowed to get into this terrible state of disrepair and filthiness?
So basically, long story short, about 6 years ago, I used to be a window cleaner. In the community where I lived, I noticed all of the road signs were filthy, and I was perfectly equipped to clean them. So basically, I cleaned the road signs as a bit of a thank you to the community and sort of make a little bit of awareness of my window cleaning business at the time. Sort of cleans up the area, makes the road safer, and that's kind kind of how that started, and people found it like a really satisfying sort of approach. So that sort of led on to today of a video in cleaning the dirty road signs and making sort of satisfying content with it as well.
What is the equipment? What have we got here?
So this is a water-fed pole system connected to a backpack, which is what feeds the water through the end of the brush there. It's perfectly equipped to basically remove this green dirty, it's like a mildew build-up that you get on the signs. Yeah. As you can see, this is like extremely effective at removing so.
So GB News viewers, if they spot a particularly grisly sign in their area, then they can get in touch.
They can do, yeah.
And Liam Wilder's the sign guy can sort you out.
If you find Liam the sign guy online, drop me a message, let me know, and I'll add you to my list of places.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, this is GB News. Welcome. Now, a lot of you have been getting in touch about Kemi Badenoch, whether she's the right person to lead the Conservatives. This is one of my favourites. June says, Starmer never answers a question. Comey is too weak. It's Kemi.
I thought it was James Comey from Head of the FA.
That's why I was laughing. Brian says, Kemi will get better. Starmer can't get any worse. So a lot of people thinking that they're pretty bad. Joining me, by the way, Jonathan Liss and also Danny Kelly. Lucia says, blimey, it's the first time I've ever agreed with Jonathan Liss for Badenoch sycophants. That has nothing to do with her being a black woman. No, it's true. I don't think she's got anything to do with it. I just don't think she's very good.
Absolutely.
You know, it's a shame as well, because I was hoping for more. And I personally picked Robert Jenrick. But that's not to say she's not a brilliant politician. She is. Danny?
She is, and she was voted in by Conservative Party members as well. So, you know, this horrible slur that the Conservative Party, generally speaking, is full of racists and everything, just completely contradicted in voting in a black woman. But that's right, the colour's got nothing to do with her ability or inability to hold anyone to account.
Well, Labour have also never had a black politician leading the party, or even a woman, so, you know. Philip says, Liz, your views... He means Jonathan. Liz, your views on Kemi are wrong and irrelevant, but I respect your right to hold and express them. So
Well, thank you.
He's a supporter.
Thank you. I mean, they're relevant in the sense that, I mean... So how can I decide what's relevant? I mean, I guess I'm on a TV programme talking about it, so it's relevant to the TV programme.
Well, Ernie's not happy with me. He says, Nana, I don't mind you inviting these lefties.
Doesn't mind.
Ernie. Thanks a lot for that. These lefties on to have debate, but the presenters need to be more robust with them when they start spouting lies. Which lie in particular? I mean,
yeah, which lie? Which lie? I want to know which one.
You be robust, but as soon as he opens his mouth, that's what's happening.
I'm not lying. I don't lie. I have a different opinion, that's all.
I'm teasing you, I know that. Then Martin says, a young man with his head screwed on. Well, that's good, isn't it? Thank goodness for that.
Who's that?
I don't know. I don't think it's...
I don't think it's me.
I don't think
that must be me. It's got to be me.
If one of us is a young man, it's all relative, isn't it? Come on.
There's also one here that says, Stephen says that this is Stephen, he says your speaker is absolutely correct regarding foreign gangs. It is common knowledge in and outside London, and this is why the government and your other speaker are totally out of touch, and my votes are sadly going to reform, sadly, because I traditionally vote for either of the main two parties. So, you know, unfortunately...
Was he siding with me then?
He's telling you that your talk...
It's just true.
You know, your thoughts on the gangs. Martin says, anyone who thinks crime statistics are made up by someone's dream is a fool. The figures are obvious. I think that must...
Well, the point I was making was that there aren't statistics compiled by the ONS. So we can't have, you know, we always use different terms for what foreign nationals are. Are they people without UK citizenship? Are they people who weren't born here? Whatever. It's a very difficult conversation to have.
You think, well, you know, we can clarify what that specifically means, and then we'll come back to you on that. But I suspect it's people who weren't born here and probably don't have a right.
Well, I mean, Boris Johnson wasn't born here, for example.
And don't have a right. I hadn't finished talking. Okay. You interrupt again. Stop doing that, Jonathan. Carol said, the list in your monologue is sad but true. We've had enough of these killings. The politicians are not listening to the people or keeping them safe from harm. And Dee says, people who work in prisons will tell you that there are many inmates who are foreign, way above the population, the general population. Yeah, well, keep your thoughts coming. gbnews.com/your say. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Plenty more still to come in the next hour, including my exclusive interview with Errol Musk after his son Elon was accused of fathering a child outside of his current relationship. You won't want to miss that. Stay tuned. Don't forget as well, you can stream the show live on YouTube. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through today is often cloudy, still on the chilly side, but turning much milder as we head into next week. So having a look at the bigger picture, we're still in this battleground between higher pressure out towards the east, low pressure towards the west, driving these southeasterly winds. So through the rest of Sunday evening then, England and Wales are staying largely dry with some clear spells developing. Across Northern Ireland, a damp end to the weekend with this band of rain moving in to western Scotland and southwest of Scotland later could turn a little bit wintry over the highest ground. But otherwise, still a chilly night to come, and especially under any lengthy clear skies, we could see a touch of frost developing by Monday morning. So to start Monday morning then, actually it's quite a bright start across northern parts of Scotland. Frosty though, with a few showers just coming into Orkney and Shetland. Across Northern Ireland, a largely cloudy picture to start the day, milder here, temperatures up around 5 degrees. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, often cloudy once again, a few showers in the southwest, but some glimmers of sunshine coming in to the far southeast of England. So through the rest of Monday then, it is a largely dry picture for most of us. Best of the sunshine across northern parts of Scotland. Few showers across Orkney and Shetland still, with some glimmers of sunshine across the southeast of England developing later. And then a band of heavier rain moving into Northern Ireland later on in the evening. Otherwise, still on the chilly side, especially in the east. Temperatures struggling at around 4 degrees. But in the west, we could see highs of 8 to 10 degrees. So as we go through Monday evening, a band of rain will move into Northern Ireland, turning heavy at times across much of eastern areas, staying cloudy. But as we go midweek, we will see the return of wet and windy weather, but temperatures are on the climb with highs up to 14 or 15 degrees.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Want to be one of 2 lucky Great British Giveaway winners? That's right, you could win one of 2 prize bundles, which includes a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in this last hour, journalist and broadcaster Danny Kelly and political commentator Jonathan Liss. With that word laugh. On today's show, I've got an exclusive interview with Elon Musk's father, Errol, following the Daily Mail's front page reporting that the tech billionaire has temporarily left X after an American influencer claimed that she had given birth to his 13th child.
In the last few years, he has, seen the light, you might say, and he's seen that the direction in which the United States is going is wrong. And so he's thrown his weight behind common sense, I would say. He's not a far-right person. Elon is dead centre.
Also this hour, I speak to one of the great British artists. The only problem is he's a forger, and he's forging other artists' work. I'll be speaking to him about why he's doing this and how he's got his art into such a good sort of place, and he's managed to trick some forgers, some actual experts. Also, with Britain's handing Mauritius up to £18 billion to lease back the island of Diego Garcia, I ask, should we just cancel the controversial Chagos Island deal?
Seems to be yet another betrayal of the British people by this terrible Labour government, because this is a terrible deal. It's bad for Britain, it's bad for our national security.
Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Good evening to you. It's 5:05. Our top stories. The Prime Minister will join other European leaders at an emergency summit in France tomorrow. It'll be hosted by Emmanuel Macron, the French president. They'll be discussing the situation in Ukraine. Also in attendance will be the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and the NATO boss Mark Rutte. Now, it all comes amid reports that Ukraine's not been invited to planned talks between Russia and the United States in Saudi Arabia to take place in the coming days. Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, said earlier, once again, that his country won't accept any decisions made between the US and Russia about Ukraine. European governments are fearing that the White House could strike a deal with Russia, with Vladimir Putin, which will damage security on the continent. And meanwhile, there are reports in this country that the Prime Minister is preparing to overrule the Chancellor and raise British defence spending. Speaking last night, the Prime Minister said it was a once-in-a-generation moment for the UK, the US and Europe to work together, and it's clear Europe must take a greater role in NATO. A knife attack in Austria that killed a 14-year-old boy and wounded 5 other people yesterday was an Islamist attack, according to local police. Authorities say the 23-year-old suspect, who's not been named, is a Syrian national who's legally a resident in Austria. He has sworn allegiance to Islamic State and was radicalised online. Authorities say he'd been living in a centre for asylum seekers and was not known to police. The attack took place in the southern city of Villach, near the border with Italy and Slovenia. 3 of those who were injured remain in intensive care. The family of the British nationals, Craig and Lindsay Foreman, they're rallying to secure their safe return after the couple was detained in Iran. They were travelling across the world on motorbikes before being arrested in January. The Iranian state media, reporting they face security charges. Well, the Foreign Office is in contact with Iranian officials to provide consular support. Sir Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands deal has been hit by another revelation as the mastermind behind it and the former Mauritian Prime Minister has been questioned over an alleged money laundering scandal. The Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has urged the Prime Minister to abandon the deal over corruption concerns. Well, speaking to GB News, Cabinet Minister Jonathan Reynolds said we need to focus on the deal itself.
Negotiation with the Chagos Islands is about securing the long-term future of an incredibly important UK-US military base. That's what the deal is seeking to achieve. It's why the previous government began negotiations around it. And what matters to me is making sure for our national security that long-term position is upheld. And, there's been a lot of commentary on what that deal is. When it's finished, it'll be published in the usual way. But let's not lose sight of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to secure the long-term future of an essential facility.
And the BAFTAs are underway right now. It's all on the South Bank in London. The stars arrived on the red carpet throughout the afternoon ahead of the awards. Let's bring you some pictures from that. David Tennant hosting the awards, as he has done many times before. He'll provide some interesting and entertaining conversation, no doubt. So what's up for awards? Well, Emilia Perez, the musical, is up there with 11 nominations, as is The Brutalist, Adrian Brody. That's 9 nominations, with Wicked, Anora, June, all in amongst the awards, you would think. Now, Conclave has the most, 12 nominations, along with Best Actor, Ralph Fiennes, and he has been speaking recently about his role as Cardinal Lawrence.
Some wonderful films here. Yeah. I mean, I love Emilia Perez and Anora and The Brutalist. There's some wonderfully strong films. It's a good time to celebrate. We need to celebrate these films and these filmmakers.
We'll keep you up to date as the awards go on through the evening as to who has won them. I'll be back with more in about half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon. It is 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you just tuned in, welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Still to come, Elon Musk is accused by a Trump influencer of fathering her baby, despite being in a relationship with the director of one of his companies. We speak to his own father next. Also this hour, can you tell a fake from the actual real thing? Well, I'll be speaking to the UK's best artist forger about why he's taken to copying masterpieces and how he gets them by the experts. And I also have our last great British debate of the weekend. Are we asking, should the government scrap the controversial Chagos Island deal? As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. Now, Elon Musk has been accused of fathering a child outside of his current relationship with Shivron Zilis, with whom he has 3 children. Now, the Tesla and SpaceX CEO has not denied or confirmed 26-year-old Ashley Sinclair's claim that he fathered her baby, following claims from her legal representatives that the pair have been privately working towards the creation of an agreement about raising their child for some time. Well, joining me now is Elon Musk's own father, Errol Musk, for his take and his reaction to the allegations. Errol, thank you very much for joining me. Lovely to see you again. Now, the big question... Can you confirm... Nice to see you. Nice to see you too. Can you confirm or deny the allegations from Ashley Sinclair against Elon?
Well, yes, I mean, Elon's not married, so, I mean, marriage is what really defines whether you are doing something out of a relationship. I mean, marriage is what matters. If he's not married, he can do whatever he likes. And apart from that, it's wonderful to have more children. I've just been in Dubai, where I met a man, rather in the United Arab Emirates, I met a man, and he asked me how many wives I've got. I didn't want to disappoint him, so I said I have one. In fact, I don't. He said, well, he has 18 wives. And then he proceeded to bring all his children, which were about 25.
Well, listen, my dad's one of 33, actually, and they have many wives in yeah, he is seriously, in Ghana. So he gets it, this whole idea that you can have multiple wives and so on and so forth. But that's probably not the situation maybe with Elon and his current partner. So are you saying that this child is definitely the 13th child of Elon's?
Well, look, if you want to have a child, if you don't want your man to be with another woman, then I suggest you commit to the man and you marry him, and then he won't do that. So if you don't marry the man, then you are just another individual, just like him. So she can go and have any children she likes. So there's nothing stopping him, just the sort of play, Western so-called so-called morals, which don't exist in 2/3 of the world.
So have you spoken to Elon? Has he confirmed that with you, that he's actually fathered this child?
No, they haven't spoken to me recently. I don't need to. I mean, it's not my business. But I'm very happy about the child. I think it's a lovely woman, and I think it's good. I mean, I certainly would be very happy to have another child. And it's really a question of finding the right partner, I mean, that's what it really boils down to. There's nothing wrong with that.
But you'd be the granddad then. You'd be the grandfather of this child. That's lovely.
Yes, it's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. And, I mean, I must have something like 22 grandchildren now. But if I compare that to the people I've met in the Middle East, I'm actually a beginner.
or the Africans. What do you think? Is it fair that the tabloids are so interested in the family life of Elon? Do you think that they should just really back off on stuff like that?
Well, yes. I mean, obviously, Elon has displayed, and all my children have displayed extraordinary ability. And I mean, at the end of the day, one doesn't want to say it's selective breeding or something, but in a way, it's a good idea. I mean, if you can pass on perhaps the type of genetics that are needed in the world, I think it's a good idea. But, that's just my thinking. Other people might say, well, I'm terrible to think like that. But no, having children is great. And I feel sorry for the people who don't have children. So I'd be quite happy to hear he had another 6 children. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, if you have plenty of money and Elon has made a fortune, he's worked very hard, and he thoroughly deserves the fortune that he's made, then if you've made a fortune and you can have loads and loads of children, that's wonderful. Yes. Surely, isn't it wonderful?
Yes.
It's interesting.
Yes, I mean, if you can afford it.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yes, if you can afford it.
Yeah.
Yes, if you can afford it. When May and I got married, I actually didn't have very much at all. And we lived in a small, flat apartment, 2-room apartment. I never gave any thought to whether I could support a child. We just wanted to have the child. And later on, of course, when you have the child, you have the need to go out and work and do things to make sure that the child is well looked after. So it's all part of the way things work. I mean, I think you should be able to have children if you can afford it. I don't think you should have children if you're going to not be able to look after them. That's very important.
Yeah, that is important. I know you've spoken about how you found it difficult spending a lot of time with your 5 children. So how did you manage? Yes. How did you manage to do it?
Yes, well, Elon and Kimball grew up with me. After May and I split up, I mean, the boys stayed with me. I eventually gave up my practice so that I could be an at-home father. And that worked very well. And we lived on a sort of horse farm. And so it was great. I was with the children, the boys, 2 boys, 24/7, and my daughter whenever the school holidays came. And I think that's the role of a person, is to nurture the next generation as much as you can. And I certainly tried. And, you know, and I think that the boys are doing the same. I'm quite sure that my daughters also will have more children. They tell me they won't be happy unless they have 5 or 6 children. And I say, well, that's great. You know, do it. My mother was one of 8. My father was one of 8. May was one of 7, I think. So, you know, I mean, it's not new. It's not a new thing.
Well, you've done a very good job with Elon. I mean, you've raised an incredible son. You've done a great job. But do you often give him any advice, father to father?
Well, you know, don't hold your children back, and don't criticize your children. If they want to do something, if you're sitting at a table and they would like to sit at another table or something like that when you're having a supper or something, let them do it. Let them do what they want. Let them get their own feel of things. Don't boss them around. Give them a chance to think and give them responsibility. And as early as you can, give them responsibility and don't boss them around. Let them choose. And when they choose something, don't criticize them.
Yeah. So do you think the story is true then? Do you think he probably has fathered this 13th child?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, why not? You know, these days, you know, as you probably know better than me, you know, you have the embryonic process where, in fact, you can even freeze embryos. It's all in vitro fertilization. You don't have to take chances. You can choose whether you want a boy or a girl. I think it's absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah. Oh, we've lost Errol Musk. I'm hoping we can get him back, because I had one more question to ask him, and I wanted to know what he thought of Elon's first few ventures into politics and how well he thought he was doing. We're going to try and get him back if we can. But what are your thoughts? gbnews.com/your say. Stay with us, though, because you've in search of some winter sun. Here's the forecast of some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there. We've got rain for Madeira over the next 24 hours, some stronger winds too, but much of the central Med will be dry with some sunny spells. We can see for Monday outbreaks of rain, strong winds, 17 Celsius Madeira. The Canary Islands generally dry, and much of western and central parts of the Mediterranean seeing some spells of sunshine. Unsettled further east towards Greece and across to Cyprus. Thunderstorms, outbreaks of showery rain. The outlook, though, is for plenty of sunny spells, temperatures in the high teens to low 20s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Well, maybe Elon cut him off, who knows? But of course, we're not going to be able to get Errol Musk back. But stay with me, because next in my interview, I'm going to be speaking to a forger, an art forger, David Henty, about why he's been copying some of the world's best paintings.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Feathers McGraw, Wallace and Gromit's their villain, has become an unlikely hit at UK tattoo parlours. He's menacing.
He is, yeah.
He's,
and in fact, he doesn't speak, and he's got this glove on top of his head trying to convince us he's a chicken or something.
And that is a real tattoo that someone has decided to have there. What do you two think about tattoos? Are they express themselves? Or?
I love it. So I've basically got Dr. King.
There we go.
Me.
Oh, there he goes. Nice. He's showing us.
If you can't fly, run.
Nice.
It's probably slightly more meaningful than having the villainous Engel.
Oh,
come on, Trey. You got
Feathers
McGraw? Maybe not. It's kind of got that kind. You know when you go abroad and you're B4 Magaluf and you Tenerife and you get a quick tattoo. It's looking like that,
chest,
or like a pirate or something. It's kind of got that vibe. Not for me. However, I do get the sentimentality around it. You know, some people have grown up on Wallace and Gromit and they love it and it has meaning. And he is a well-written character, so I get it.
Brilliant, isn't it?
I prefer my tattoos a bit more meaningful.
Bit more, yeah. I feel like as well,
there's a surge in it. Lots of people have had it, but then is it then going to become unpopular because of it? And how many people regret the
Then you're in
tattoos?
trouble.
Apparently,
Buyer's
not
remorse.
14% of people regret tattoos.
Wow.
See, I think that's where the meaningful side comes into it. I've got a couple of meaningful tattoos, and I know I will never get
Hidden
bored
ones?
of them. Not one on my wrist, one on my ankle. They're not hidden, but yeah, I think because they mean something to me, I'll never get bored.
Yes, exactly. I think that's important. If you're going to, a tattoo's for life, isn't it?
That's the thing.
It's got to mean
I haven't got
something.
anything. I'd be indecisive. I think I'd get
you
something...
thought, I want to keep on my body forever?
If I had about 6 or 7 pints and then stumbled into a tattoo parlour...
You'd come out with
something
that.
chaotic.
I'd be able to pronounce
a disaster could happen, then I walk out and oh no, I've got this for the rest of my life.
You might become addicted.
Well, let's hope not.
Some people do, don't they?
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon. If you've just tuned in, I've become part of the sofa and I'm a floating head. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Welcome. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I really have become that. But it's time for this week's interview. Now, today, joining me is a gentleman called David Henty. Now, he is one of the world's most notorious art forgers. With no formal training, David became famous for creating highly convincing replicas of masterpieces by artists like Larry Van Gogh and also Modigliani, I can't even say that. Modigliani. He's navigated everything from prison to high-end auctions and even collaborated with authors to bring his expertise to fiction. So, to hear about his incredible journey, I'm pleased to say that joining me in the studio is our art forger, David Henty.
Hello, Nana. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Now, we've got some of your pictures here. We'll show those. But I want to ask you, you're an art forger. Why would you tell everybody who you are and what you look like? You're sort of a Banksy. Keep quiet. Why have you brought this to the forefront?
Well, what happened was I was doing eBay and various auctions, local auctions and stuff. And one day, Robert Mendick from the Telegraph, this is 10 years ago now, turned up on my door. And anyway, I knew I hadn't done anything wrong because I always put a caveat, sold as after, or in the style of the artist. So Robert Mendick said, well, look, we're going to do a story on you. Will you let us in? Or we're just to write a story anyway? So I said, OK. So anyway, that's how I got exposed. And so I lost my eBay. I had 5 accounts. I had 1,000 positive feedbacks all from art. Anyway, I lost all my accounts. I lost my PayPal and everything. But then I worked out how to get back on eBay because they banned me. So I don't know if I should say.
Well, maybe. Well, if it'll affect you negatively, don't.
Yeah.
But you worked it out anyway. You don't need to tell us how you did it.
Yeah. And I came back on eBay, and then I was going to Happy Along for another year, and I had a lovely Winston Churchill painting for sale on eBay, and all of a sudden Robert phoned me up again and said, "We're going to do another article. We know you've been back on eBay and different places." And that was it.
Well, why would they ban you anyway? You're allowed to create replica pictures of things and sell them.
Well, yeah,
surely.
you are. I mean, they did ask the police, the art squad, and the art squad's always done.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong, yeah.
Yeah, as long as you've admitted that you're not trying to pass your work as that person's work.
Yeah.
But how's your work? So to talk to me about why you got into art and why you decided to sort of become an expert at recreating masterpieces.
Well, I've always drawn from a kid. My brother Steve is a fantastic draftsman. We're a creative family. My sister's got 30 books out, paranormal books. So we're all creative. But I never really thought I could make money because I used to do stuff for my dad, but he never used to pay me. So I never got paid. So I never thought it was never thought it was a route to go down. So I took a bad route and I got in trouble. I ended up getting 5 years in prison.
Okay.
For forgery. But this was forgery of passports.
Forging of passports, oh God.
well, yeah. What happened was a friend of mine, he asked me, could I do the security? Because I could do watermarks and stuff like that. Could I do the security on the passports? They couldn't do it. So I thought, well, it's easy. So I showed him how to do it. And obviously I got arrested and I got 5 years. So that's when I really sort of sat down and started working at art. I enrolled in a full-time art class, although they never gave you any formal teaching, but you're just there and you can paint and do as you like, you know. So I really honed my craft there, and within a few weeks I'd sold a painting for £1,000. I gave it out to my brothers, Walter Sickert, and they sold it in Bermondsey Market.
So you started painting whilst you were in prison?
Forging.
Yeah. Forging.
Yeah.
But you know, but you went in there for something that was illegal, and that's right that you got punished. However, it turned out that what you ended up doing has been perfectly legal and has helped you have an actual living doing it. So how do you go about replicating a masterpiece and say so a Van Gogh?
Well, a Van Gogh.
What would you do? How do you start? What's the most important bit that an art expert would catch you out on?
What you've got to do is, I mean, you can get the right materials, the canvas, the paints with the forensically clean paints, but you must go and look at the artist. You've got to go and study. It's no good just trying to do one from illustration in a book. You have to go and... you've really got to do your research. You've got to look, you know, and go as many exhibitions or see as many as you can, and then notice the textures, and you'll see little patterns where Van Gogh would do different things in different paintings. So yeah, you pick that up and you start experimenting and working it out, and by the end you can paint Van Goghs. You know, I do Caravaggios, Lowry's.
How long does it take you to, say, create? Let's have a look. So your one of the masterpieces over there, this woman. I want this one.
You want this
You
one?
can leave it there. Actually, I think we can. Can we leave it there? You can see it. If we might be able to home in on it specifically. Oh, stand her up. Oh, she's. Well, that's the same. She was better before you.
Yeah. Sorry.
Before you got involved. but so that one, that is. There's a signature.
That's a Modigliani.
Is it Modigliani?
Modigliani, and that's Alice.
And that's Alice. What are the special bits on Alice where the little brushstrokes that would give away that this was a forgery?
Well, what I do when I paint Modigliani, he's got a different way of painting than a lot of other painters. So he will mix the colours, different colours on the actual painting. So he picks up...
I see.
Yeah, so it's a different way of painting.
Does he use his thumbs? Because just by the way the way the things are moved, it looks like you...
Well, you do.
You see, I can tell that.
What he's done there is... So some of his paintings are really thin paint, and other ones are really thick, and he puts aside the brush on, he loads the brush up, puts it on, and lifts it. So there's a...
Sort of like a...
So there's a texture.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he's getting in some. And, you know, I really like that one. It's...
And how long would it have taken you to paint that?
A couple of days, 2 or 3 days.
What's the most challenging aspect of it?
Of art forgery?
Yeah, just forging, yeah? What is the most challenging about it?
It's just doing the homework. And what I like to do is, I like to sort of read everything I can about them, go and look at their paintings. I've just come back from Rome, looking at Caravaggios. And then really, it's like an actor, method actor. You take it all in, and you start by the end you start dreaming about painting in that style, and you know you're ready then, and you know you can just go and continue his work on. That's what I like to do.
Have any of your paintings, so any forgeries that you've done, have any of them actually been properly mistaken for the original and sold as though they're original? Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And do
lots of painters, yeah.
And do you let those people know, or nobody knows, and just let it?
No, I don't.
Keep your mouth shut.
I don't. But it's not for me. When I've sold them before, on eBay and different people, different antique dealers and stuff, they've ended up in auctions. So there's a lot of painters out there that are.
Wow. You don't need to tell us which ones they are, because people wouldn't know unless you tell them, and we rely on the experts to tell us that. So do you ever, in a sense, experience some sort of guilt because you're copying an artwork and someone might think it's a real thing? You're not doing anything bad if it's seen that way. You're not trying to deliberately deceive anybody, so there's nothing illegal happening here. You're drawing them, you're letting people know that they are a replica.
Yeah. I mean, I sign them on the back.
Yeah, so you sign them on the back so people know.
If they ask me to.
Yeah, so people know that if they ask you to.
No, I don't feel guilt. I feel pleasure because a lot of people can't afford. Like the Modigliani, one of his painters made 170 million the other day.
Oh wow!
Which incidentally, I've got at home. A big nude. But you know, so you can't afford. Ordinary people can't afford that. So it's nice to have a bit, you know, rather than the print, like a real thing, or the nearest you can get to a real thing.
So what's going on with you then? Is there anything new happening that we need to look out for you?
Well, Peter James, he's a friend of mine. He wrote a book. Well, his first book I was in was a true crime book about the passports. They wanted to know how I forged the passports. That was called Death Comes Knocking, written with Graham Bartlett. He was the chief of the police. Well, Graham Bartlett arrested me, incidentally, for the passports. But he introduced Graham to me years later, and because Peter was doing a piece on forgery, art forgery, had an idea for a book. And Graham said, "Oh, I know an art forger." So that was it, and we bonded. And he wrote a book called Picture You Dead, which was a bestseller, #1 bestseller. And now they've made it into a stage adaptation, and that's flying. It's running for 6 months. Peter Ash from Coronation Street is playing me. He's a really nice guy. And, it's going around the theatres and stuff, and it's really doing well.
That's fantastic, isn't it? If people want to find out more about it, is there a website or somewhere they can go?
It's on Peter James, I think it's on there. And then just put in Picture You Dead, the play. But they're making it into a TV series, the Grace series as well.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's quite incredible, isn't it? It's fascinating. So what are you working on, piece of artwork that you're working on now? In March, we're going away to Rome, my wife and I. We're going away to Rome, and I'm studying Caravaggios because I have a 400-year-old canvas, an old religious canvas that I cleaned. And I've had a forensic team make up some paints, Caravaggio's palette for me, but there's nothing synthetic in the paints. So a friend of mine, David Forrest, he's a professor. He's a professor of Caravaggio studies. We're going to recreate, or not recreate, we're going to make a new Caravaggio that hasn't been seen in 300, 400 years. How exciting.
And the last one that got found was the Toulouse Caravaggio, and it made 140 million. So we'll be doing something like that.
Wow, that's quite incredible. Well, listen, David, it's lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much. If people want to pick up your artwork, and obviously there's nothing illegal here, David is telling you that it is not, he's also not encouraging you to forge passports. He went to prison for that. But luckily in prison he did learn how to draw, which is useful now, so he doesn't have to go down that track again. So just in case there's some woke people watching now saying, no, I'm not. But I'm just saying that these are quite incredible. People want to find out more about you. Do you have a website or something?
Yeah, I have a David Henty Art Forger website.
David!
Well, what can you say?
I think they're amazing. Which one can I have?
You can have that one.
I love her. Thank you very much, David Henty. Lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, and you, Nana. Thank you very much.
It's such a pleasure. That is, of course, David Henty. He is an art forger. Yes, 31 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you just tuned in, where have you been? We've only got about half an hour of the show left, but it's very exciting because we've got loads still to come. gbnews.com/you'll say as well for your views. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Still to come. We'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should the government scrap the controversial Chagos Island deal? My panel will be joining me, Jonathan Liss and Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Good evening. It is 32 minutes past 5. Our top stories. The Prime Minister will join other European leaders at an emergency summit in France tomorrow. They'll be discussing the situation in Ukraine as the US prepares to forge ahead with peace negotiations with Russia. Talks between the US and Russia are to take place in Saudi Arabia over the coming days. Volodymyr Zelensky, though, the Ukrainian president, says his country's not been invited to those talks. He reiterated earlier that Ukraine will never accept any decisions made between the US and Russia about Ukraine. Meanwhile, European governments fear that a White House deal with Russia would damage security on the continent. The government has warned President Trump that talks about Ukraine will fail if he shuts out Europe. Sir Keir Starmer, though, has offered to act as a bridge between the US and the EU. A knife attack in Austria that killed a 14-year-old boy and wounded 5 other people yesterday was an Islamist attack. That's according to local police. Authorities say the 23-year-old suspect is a Syrian national who has legal residence in Austria. He swore allegiance to Islamic State, police say, and was radicalised online. He was not known to authorities. The attack took place in the southern city of Villach, near the border with Italy. 3 of those who were injured remain in intensive care. The government's announced a new multi-billion-pound investment in the steel industry. A consultation was launched aimed at looking at long-term issues facing the sector, like high electricity costs, unfair trading practices and scrap metal recycling. It's thought the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs and increases to energy costs have spurred on the £2.5 billion plan. And the BAFTAs is underway, the British Film and Television Awards on the South Bank in London. A little earlier, stars were arriving on the red carpet. We brought you some live pictures of that. Here we can see David Tennant, the host of the awards, arriving for it. Now, Conclave, that's the Ralph Fiennes film, is up for 12 awards, including Best Actor for Fiennes, ahead of Emilia Perez. That has 11 nominations. The Brutalist with Adrian Brody comes in with 9, and then amongst the others, Wicked, Anora, June, along with a couple of biopics. The Bob Dylan film and the Irish hip-hop duo Kneecap are up for 6 awards. Jeff Goldblum will be performing on the piano during the in memoriam section of the awards. I'll keep an eye out for the winners, and I'll bring those to you a little later here on GB News. That's it for the moment. I'll be back with more at 6.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through today is often cloudy, still on the chilly side, but turning much milder as we head into next week. So having a look at the bigger picture, we're still in this battleground between higher pressure out towards the east, low pressure towards the west, driving these southeasterly winds. So through the rest of Sunday evening then, England and Wales are staying largely dry with some clear spells developing. Across Northern Ireland, a damp end to the weekend with this band of rain moving in to western Scotland and southwest of Scotland later, could turn a little bit wintry over the highest ground. But otherwise, still a chilly night to come, and especially under any lengthy clear skies, we could see a touch of frost developing by Monday morning. So to start Monday morning then, actually it's quite a bright start across northern parts of Scotland. Frosty though, with a few showers just coming into Orkney and Shetland. Across Northern Ireland, a largely cloudy picture to start the day, milder here, temperatures up around 5 degrees. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, often cloudy once again, a few showers in the southwest, but some glimmers of sunshine coming in to the far southeast of England. So through the rest of Monday then, it is a largely dry picture for most of us. Best of the sunshine across northern parts of Scotland. Few showers across Orkney and Shetland still, with some glimmers of sunshine across the southeast of England developing later. And then a band of heavier rain moving into Northern Ireland later on in the evening. Otherwise, still on the chilly side, especially in the east. Temperatures struggling at around 4 degrees. But in the west, we could see highs of 8 to 10 degrees. So as we go through Monday evening, a band of rain will move into Northern Ireland, turning heavy at times across much of eastern areas, staying cloudy. But as we go midweek, we will see the return of wet and windy weather, but temperatures are on the climb with highs up to 14 or 15 degrees.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're
the failure
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, 38 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. Welcome if you just joined me. 21 minutes to go. I'm Nana Akua. No, I'm not, but I always tell them. This is time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should the government scrap the Chagos deal? Sir Keir Starmer's Chagos Island giveaway was plunged, it was like the Great British giveaway, it literally is, was plunged into fresh controversy after the former Mauritian Prime Minister, the mastermind behind the deal, has been interrogated in a money laundering scandal. Well, Pravind Jugnauth and members of his family were questioned yesterday after a 3-hour search of his home. The Conservative Party are now saying that the imploding Chagos giveaway should be stopped following the revelations, describing it as a dodgy deal. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the government scrap the Chagos Islands Great British giveaway? Joining me now, my panel, political commentator Jonathan Liss, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Jonathan Liss.
I've always had mixed feelings about this deal. I'm not sort of a flag-waving, sort of nationalist or anything. And at the same time, I am a pragmatist. So I don't have any particular feelings about it. I think that the most important people, who are the Chagosians themselves, were not consulted at all. And the reason for that is that they were kicked out of the islands by the British and the Americans sort of 50 or 60 years ago in a great disgrace to the British state. And so they haven't really been consulted at all, and they're the people that I'd like to hear from the most. But I've listened to sort of both sides. Obviously, this whole process was kick-started by the last Conservative government, and when Starmer was asked...
Well, no, they had it. They'd been talking about it, and then they decided against it, and then it was left there as something that they had been planning, but not something they'd initiated. And there was several people within the party who had stalled it. So, for example, David Cameron said, no, we can't do this. But the idea had been floating around for quite some time.
All right, but they literally started negotiating, didn't they?
Well, the idea was floating around, and it has been for a long time.
But when Starmer was asked about it in the Commons a couple of weeks ago by Kemi Badenoch, he offered, I think, some quite sort of interesting... national security reason. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think that it was if it was ever. I'm trying.
So there's one reason at least. Please try.
Okay, so I think that one. All right. Bloody when the price. If there was...
Hurry up, man.
Oh, bloody hell, sorry.
Apologies for the language. That's enough.
Can you just come to me, Nana? He's waffling.
Oh, my God. Okay, I'm going to find it.
Do your research before you come on air, Liz.
One reason why it's a good idea to do a break...
Oh, my God.
The Chagos.
I agree with Jonathan. I think there should be a referendum. There was a referendum...
When did he say that?
Well, he said that the inhabitants should be consulted.
So,
I'm not for that to be a referendum. I think they should be consulted.
Yeah, but I'm using the word referendum because of Gibraltar and because of the Falkland Islands. I think Donald Trump, the intervention of Donald Trump, I think that's a seismic thing that people weren't really anticipating. And I would defer to the military experts who are telling us about the importance of this and the long-lasting significance of these islands, which are I think they're 1,800 miles away from Mauritius or something. But then saying that, as a Brit, I can't use geographical distance in any way to undermine territorial significance, with the properties and the countries that we own around the world and have actually had an interest in. So I defer to the experts on that. But also, all of a sudden, you've got someone who's been investigated for money laundering.
The Prime Minister of the Mauritius.
Oh, my God.
And what it was that members of his family, so Pravind Jugnauth, and members of his family were hauled in for questioning at the offices of the Mauritian Financial Crimes Commission. Commission yesterday following a 3-hour search of his home where they found suitcases full of money stuffed with tens of thousands of pounds worth of cash. Rolex and Cartier watches and UK visas, as according to these reports. So the Associate has denied the items were his, but it is looking more and more dubious and dodgy. So
permission to speak.
He's done his research.
Thank you. So, what Starmer said is that there is legal uncertainty because of the status of the islands, partly because of the dispute between Mauritius, partly maybe perhaps because of the Chagos Islands themselves. And so, what this deal is aiming to do, according to the Prime Minister, who obviously has access to highly, intelligence, classified information that I don't. But he said that he needs legal certainty, and this organisation, which would then be installed at the UN, would offer that legal certainty in case there was ever a dispute in the future, which potentially put at risk the base which the US and the UK argue is important for national security.
I'm afraid I'm not buying any of that.
Well, I'm just saying what the Prime Minister said.
And I'm really not buying this at all. I want to know why this guy, Pravind Jugnauth, who is the the former Prime Minister of Mauritius, who's masterminded the deal, is being investigated with and they found suitcase, money, Rolex, UK visas. This stinks because the British public are not buying why this has been given away, as it were, at this point, and why we would be paying money for something that we already kind of have some ownership of. To then rent it back. It makes no sense.
The lad's as bent as a banana. How can you deny in his house, underneath his bed, suitcases full of hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of dough, gold Rolexes? How can you say, not me, Gov, not me?
Jury. The man's entitled to a fair trial.
He's entitled to a fair trial, but also because it's not currently a live trial in the UK, that is my opinion. He's guilty.
You can't say that.
No, I know.
The problem with this, and this is what is pointed out here, that it kind of raises a red flag. Any money that is paid by Britain to Mauritius will actually end up being misappropriated for personal gain. So that is the problem with the deal. But it also does cast a shadow on the whole idea of doing the deal in the first place, seeing as the Chagos Islands, there's no real link with Mauritius and the Chagos Islands, so it doesn't really make any sense.
The bit I can't get my head around is why it's costing us millions or billions of pounds in rent when we can just stick with it. That's the bit I can't wrap my head around.
Well, especially when we are struggling in this country and the priorities are elsewhere. But what do you think? Look,
I certainly agree that it's not a priority.
No.
And if you take the Prime Minister's words at face value, which I know you don't want to do, but he's just saying this is to safeguard the base for against all legal sort of challenge in the future, in future decades. But I certainly would agree with you. The price tag seems too high for it.
It doesn't. It could be a stitch up potentially if we're looking at another side of it. Somebody may have stitched him up, but I'm not finding. There's too many links.
The suitcase is full of cash. That they need to be investigated. Someone's potentially siphoning off a load of dough. And what you need to then think about is how come so many heavy transactions are being done in cash? When suitcases full of cash are used as sweeteners, who's giving them the sweeteners? Where is all this cash coming from? Blind eyes to be turned.
Well, we'll see what happens with that, but I think it is fascinating, isn't it, really? The architect of the Chagos deal found with suitcases of money and a Rolex and UK potential visas. Of course, he's denying all of that he has any knowledge of it, but what do you think? GBNews.com/your say. Coming up, Supplement Sunday, I'm going to be speaking to the panel about some of the other stories that you might have missed.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Headliners on GB News, 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Have you noticed that more and more stores are closing? Well, last year, apparently 13,000 stores closed for the last time on the high street.
Well, experts warn the worst is still to come for our small businesses.
Well, let's talk to retail expert Jeremy Baker. Good morning to you, Jeremy. How bad is it and what can be done?
Well, nothing can be done about it. Retail is like that. It's a boom and bust operation. So last year, let's say you had a shop and it was booming. This year, the consumer can just change their mind. They don't need to come back to your shop ever again.
Well, it is sad, Jeremy, because our high streets are the beating heart of our communities, aren't they? And for many people, I know I can relate to my high street, it is such a depressing sight, walking down there and seeing them all boarded up and closed down.
But how often do you walk down that boarded up high street? I think people move on to something else. The online world is very big. Yeah. And lots of other things are very exciting. And so people, you know, the shop, I like to go to my GP in a shopping centre and get my tests done there rather than tramp off all the way to the GP, for example. And children could go to little schools in the high street. I've seen that happen already. So lots of things could happen to the high street. It could be much more a social centre. Much more kind of like pubs, coffee shops, all that. Charities. I don't see anything wrong with charities taking over. But the idea of the shop-centred high street, finished, that's gone. Never coming back. Goodbye. It's not sad, it's just life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We've been reading some of your messages. It's most entertaining. Well, I've got to say, it's time for Supplement Sunday. Danny Kelly and also Jonathan Liss join me. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome. Danny Kelly, let's start with you.
OK, so this is in Essex village, and the population of 707. The village is called Wethersfield, and they will soon be outnumbered, the 707 residents, by asylum seekers, 800 moving into a nearby disused Air Force military base. And they say that they can't sell their houses, the property prices are plummeting, and the asylum seekers, and I'm quoting here, this is a Sunday Express exclusive where they've visited Wethersfield, and people are openly defecating outside on the streets.
This is the asylum seekers who are living in...
Yeah, they're not the residents, yeah. The residents have toilets.
No. It's not funny, is it?
It's not funny.
That's the problem, isn't it? I think that when people they're having their asylum claim assessed, actually they should be in a confined space. You shouldn't be allowed
until we know who they are.
Because you don't know who they are and you don't know what that will bring. I think that's wise. And I think if people thought that, then maybe they would reconsider coming here and being held in asylum like that, because it's just not great, is it? What are you looking at me like that for, Jonathan?
I'm not looking at like anything.
Yeah, well, I think until you know the background of somebody and where they're from and all this stuff, I think
that, if you're asking my opinion about asylum seekers, I think that they deserve rights even while their claims are being processed.
They have got rights.
Yes.
They can't right to roam.
Right.
You know, you've come to a foreign country, just because you're claiming asylum doesn't mean that now you're in the country, you have a right to be wherever you want in the country. You can claim asylum, you wait in wherever the detention or holding centre is, your process is claimed. It shouldn't take a long time to do that, by the way. I do agree that needs to be swift, but I don't think you should be allowed to roam around when nobody has... We don't know who you are or what
I just don't think that you should be held in prison conditions. You're not.
It's not a prison.
OK.
You're just being held until we know who you are.
And pooing on the pavement, Jonathan.
Well, I mean... I don't know what you want me to say. I haven't inspected the toilet facilities at this place.
Yeah, so you think you even think that was acceptable? Jonathan, let's do your one. You've been... OK, go on.
Well, I was just going to say that obviously there should be decent sanitary facilities, and if there aren't, then I would want to know why not.
I would suspect that in this country where we have certain human rights, that there are. So there's no need for them to do that. Jonathan, let's your supplement. Let's have yours. This is interesting, this battle. 9 to 5, he's not going to stop until £620 million of Bitcoin is back.
So, Nana, yeah, it's always been my understanding that the supplement should be something nice and fun.
Get on with it, do your work.
All right, and not something where you have a massive Barney about it. But anyway...
Well, you got it wrong.
So,
you got it wrong.
I got it wrong, apparently. So next time I'm going to be doing something about trans people living gorgeous and happy lives, just to wind you up.
Well, no, I wouldn't... No,
Here comes the Barney. Ironically, here's the Barney.
I want everyone to live a happy life.
Right, okay,
I don't believe in medical transition.
With their pronouns being respected. Anyway, so this one is
don't
about...
tell me how I should address you. I'll address you by your
Oh, my
name.
God. See where you started, Jonathan.
OK,
go on.
this is about James Howe's hard drive, which sounds like the start of a terrible story, but it's not. It's a story about a poor guy whose ex-partner dumped his Bitcoin wallet into a tip in Newport, and he's been trying to get the Bitcoin wallet back ever since. Now, Newport Council, he's taken them to court, and they won because they say they own it. He says it's worth he wants to buy the whole tip because Newport Council says they're going to close it. So if you're going to close the tip, let me buy it, make my fortune. He even offered to share the money with the council. I think it's just so mean, and it's unfortunate they are digging their heels in. There's like this, let the poor guy try and get his fortune, if nothing else.
Oh, bless him. Well, that's unfortunate, but that's how it goes. Unfortunately, he picked the wrong one.
Tough.
He picked the wrong woman to mess around with. Well, my one is simply Warwick Davis. He's that wonderful actor. He found out about his BAFTA fellowship whilst he was on the toilet. Oh, he's a ward, bless his heart.
Email came through.
Yeah, didn't it just? Well, listen, loads more still to come here on GB News. We are the People's Channel. Throughout the show, I've been asking, should the government scrap its controversial Chagos Island deal? And according to our poll on GBNews.com, 99% of you say yes. Only 1% of you say no.
Who the 1%?
Exactly. I can also tell you that our online poll of the day, which asks, do you agree with Vladimir Zelensky that Europe needs its own army, currently sits at 19% say yes, 81% say no. Thank you so much to my panel, political commentator Jonathan Liss, and also to broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly for joining me, and a huge thank you to you at home for your company as ever. I'm back 9:30 on Friday for Britain's Newsroom. Up next, well, there's loads more surprises here on GB News. Stay tuned.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through today is often cloudy, still on the chilly side, but turning much milder as we head into next week. So having a look at the bigger picture, we're still in this battleground between higher pressure out towards the east, low pressure towards the west, driving these southeasterly winds. So through the rest of Sunday evening then, England and Wales are staying largely dry with some clear spells developing. Across Northern Ireland, a damp end to the weekend with this band of rain moving in to western Scotland and southwest of Scotland later could turn a little bit wintry over the highest ground. But otherwise, still a chilly night to come, and especially under any lengthy clear skies, we could see a touch of frost developing by Monday morning. So to start Monday morning then, actually it's quite a bright start across northern parts of Scotland. Frosty though, with a few showers just coming into Orkney and Shetland. Across Northern Ireland, a largely cloudy picture to start the day, milder here, temperatures up around 5 degrees. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, often cloudy once again, a few showers in the southwest, but some glimmers of sunshine coming in to the far southeast of England. So through the rest of Monday then, it is a largely dry picture for most of us. Best of the sunshine across northern parts of Scotland. Few showers across Orkney and Shetland still, with some glimmers of sunshine across the southeast of England developing later. And then a band of heavier rain moving into Northern Ireland later on in the evening. Otherwise, still on the chilly side, especially in the east. Temperatures struggling at around 4 degrees. But in the west, we could see highs of 8 to 10 degrees. So as we go through Monday evening, a band of rain will move into Northern Ireland, turning heavy at times across much of eastern areas, staying cloudy. But as we go midweek, we will see the return of wet and windy weather, but temperatures are on the climb with highs up to 14 or 15 degrees.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you not one, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning.